And we are live.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 32. We'll get started on the audio here very soon, and then
there's the alert.
Explain on everything real quick. But before we start, make sure to like and then share this with a friend so we get this out there more. We'd really appreciate that. So thank you, and we hope that you enjoy this episode tonight. So
I don't.
Thank you for joining.
Fuck it. Nope. Don't.
All right.
Don't.
We got Paul Waller. What's up, Paul? Kevin King. Thanks. Nate. Dustin. Even though he's not on the live feed tonight, he is going to be answering questions throughout the night too, fellas, and bringing questions to our attention. So, ready?
Yeah, I was going to give it a couple seconds here. We got 6 people on.
Matt, what's up, man?
7.
Hope you're enjoying that Boone County that you got last week. It's very, very good.
Got the Bic over here.
Yeah.
It works.
Morning, Ray from from Columbus.
Matt, how's it going? Matt just picked up a couple picks from Ed Bly.
Nice. What's up, Matthew Styles?
Yeah.
Alright, might as well get started. I know everyone's kind of on a time frame here.
If you guys,
midnight.
Yeah. If you guys could please share this on your profiles, we'd really, really appreciate it, so then we can spread this thing.
I'm going to do it right now. It's a good point. Oh, maybe. And then we can get started here.
Yes.
I still don't know how to use an iPad. It's crazy. The keyboard's different. It's stupid.
It's just bigger.
Maybe you're
I don't like it. What's that, man?
Maybe you're different.
It's good to have you back, Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Content Kyle's back in the garage.
Yes, after a long 2 months. At least that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Come join. LOL. What's LOL mean?
Some Korean thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Ray.
Laughing out lemons.
Laughing out loud.
Lemons.
Lemons. Puking lemons. Alright, let's do it.
The lewds.
Alright, let's do it. Share it, everyone. I just shared it, I think. Hopefully.
Alright.
Nice. Thanks, Matthew. Or I don't know if you're sharing our thing or your bourbon, but thank you. That's good. Alright.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Good, cool. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bourbon and BS podcast. This is episode 32. We've made it to episode 32. Tonight, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We have something new that you may have not heard of yet, the New Riff Single Barrel. That is by New Riff Distillery, and we'll dive into that more. We were smoking the Rocky Patel 20th anniversary, which I have not had before, so we're excited to do that one. And our second cigar of the evening is going to be the Monte Cristo Classic Series provided by Altadis, one of our sponsorships. And then our topic of the evening is going to be moral dilemmas.
Moral dilemma. Yep, that's right.
Moral dilemmas. So, how's it going, Steve?
It's going really well. I just grilled up a
Big steak, I saw that.
21-ounce ribeye.
That's huge.
Didn't feel like hotheads tonight, so while I was at Kroger getting some stuff,
I think it's a good substitute. I mean,
hotheads,
quality steak.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I encourage everyone to do the same.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. So what have we done in the last week? We've had a couple of business meetings. Talked about last time on the podcast, kind of like our roadmap, like what we've been thinking about lately, kind of give our viewers and listeners an idea of where we want to take this thing.
Yeah,
it's been interesting. We've learned more about ourselves once again and what each other wants and how we want to build this thing together, and it's been really good.
Yeah, it has been a good week, I think, so far.
Yeah.
And now we're back to Wednesday, and we've got Brandon Karst here.
Again.
Yeah.
Is this your third time, Brandon?
This is the third time, and I was here early, so I figure based on the marriage counseling you guys just did, I'm basically here to give you guys a fresh start.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
The reason we picked you specifically for this topic, because we know you're going to dive hard into this thing
I've already set up some dams to keep myself from getting fired or saying something I'm going to regret. So.
I have. Getting fired from what?
I don't know.
You don't even work here.
No, but I've got people I work with on Facebook, so if they see it...
You have people at work that are on Facebook?
Yes.
No shit.
Yeah, not a lot of people do. But.
No. I think it's going to catch on.
I don't think you're going to talk about your job, but I don't want you to hold anything back. I really want to get everything you
I'm
got.
holding a few things back. All right, I got a few things back in the
Will you
vault.
pour him a drink?
Yep, I can do that.
Just to see if we can loosen up those dams there.
Well, and even next week is going to be great because we're going to try to get Spencer on as well with him.
No, next week we're actually going to do the Cuban one.
Oh, that's right.
So Brad Grimsley will be back. We'll be smoking some of the Cubans that we brought back. Brandon was one of the guys that went on the trip this last month, really.
Yeah,
a little over a month
August,
ago.
mid-August.
Yeah, so we're going to have Brad Grimsley. We're going to do the Cuban podcast. Mark Jeremias at this point is not going to be joining us next week because Brad and Mark actually leave for Cuba the next morning. So we'll have Brad all geeked out, ready to go and just smoke some. And we'll do that Havana Club rum.
Yep.
Which will be good.
Yeah.
Should you bring some of the blue back?
The blue back, yeah.
Nice, that's good.
That is very good.
Very good.
And
then we'll ask them to bring back a bottle
Yeah.
when they go down. We'll probably kill it.
And we'll probably be doing the Bacardi 8 that Andy brought back from Puerto Rico.
Just
right?
I think he brought it back from Puerto Rico to the duty free or something like that. But it is something that's available here, but it's a little bit nicer than your normal Bacardi. You know, that just you want something in rum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, like we always like to do, we like to thank our sponsors before we get started on the whiskey here. So, again, these cigars, the Rocky Patel and the Monte Cristo, are from the Tinderbox at Easton. So, for the next week or so, please show up to the Tinderbox. You get 15% off if you mention the Bourbon and BS podcast, and you get that 15% off when you buy the Rocky Patel 20th anniversary. So, it's a pretty good deal, right, Brandon?
Absolutely.
And then we want to thank Altadis Cigars, as always, for providing Monte Cristo Classic Series tonight. That is going to be our second cigar of the evening. And always thank you, Brian and Steve, for formulating the third cigar of the night that we always have.
BS Cigar.
Absolutely awesome. BS Cigar Company. I think I had about 3 of those last night, just because they're so good and I can't get away from them. But yeah, so again, before we start this thing, we really would like everyone to share this, tell a friend, and like it and subscribe. We really, on the audio, our listeners on our audio, we would really appreciate it if you downloaded it, because that's where we get kind of the viewership and stuff, and that's how we get the analytics, so we can get bigger sponsorships and give them all those analytics. So thank you for listening and thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was distracted because Dustin's going full-blown producer. I don't think it shows the battery on that screen.
It doesn't.
Yeah, so I think we're good whether it's plugged in or not.
Being plugged in, the battery
Well,
should
it
be
was
fine, right?
it was plugged in and it still popped up.
Low battery?
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
That's not good.
That's not
Turn the plug around.
Figure that out.
So that's why I plugged it into my box to see if it'll work.
Okay.
Well, you want to start it on the whiskey?
Yeah, I'll probably edit that part out.
Okay. Or leave it in. It's all part of the production, right? Why not? So, we'll start in on the whiskey tonight. You know how we do it. We do the whiskey, the cigar, the pairing, and then we get into our topic of the evening. First off, we have the New Riff Single Barrel. For those that do not know, that is in Newport, Kentucky. If you ever saw OKI Single Barrel floating around, there was a 10-year, there was a 12-year, and there was also single barrels of that. And that's been floating around for the last few years or so, and was actually discontinued of last year because New Riff decided that this year was going to be the year that they finally bottled their own juice, which is kind of interesting. It's actually the same bottle, different labeling and stuff like that. Something that I didn't know that I found out today, or not today, but this past weekend when I was down there, when I got the the bottle, it was kind of interesting that, like, I didn't understand what New Riff meant, like why they named it New Riff, and it kind of goes off of their slogan, like it's a new riff, but with an old tradition on an old tradition.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like if I still can't figure out
kind of a reimagining type of thing.
Yeah,
like a heavy influence by a classic, but
yeah, like
something new.
a new style, but on an old tradition
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Like a new riff.
Yeah,
Nailed it.
I'm back.
perfect. But I do like their whole marketing technique with like how they do the bottles and everything.
Did we figure that out how they do that? Because it's kind of like I thought it was like a decal or a screen, but it doesn't.
It's a decal. So we'll try to describe it here. It's a glass bottle. If you've ever seen the OKI bottles, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it's got this. It's almost like a wrap. That's a black wrap at the very top, and then it kind of fades throughout the bottom of the bottle, and the wrap or the decal just like disappears. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's very
But
cool.
like Brandon, you can even feel that. It's kind of interesting how they did that, but they did a great job with it. So the single barrel that we are doing this evening is going to be I believe their third installment that the distiller did. I believe it's 112 proof. Is that right, Brandon?
Yeah, 112.5.
112.5. Have you got? I think I'm the only one, and Brandon's the one that's got it in our glass so far.
I have not poured it yet.
But it's got a really good amber color to it, kind of a dark, I mean, besides amber, be almost like molasses looking color. It's really good though. For a 4-year bourbon, I believe that it was barreled on 8/26 of 14, and then it was bottled on 8/31 of 18.
Okay.
So it's just over 4 years, 4 years and 5 days.
Do they have their own rack house and everything? Like they're doing their own thing?
Yeah,
entirely?
yeah. It's kind of interesting how they do it. It's a very non-traditional way of like stacking their barrels, and you see that a lot with these newer distilleries where it's kind of just you walk in and they don't have a ton of barrels in the facility because it is so new, but then it's just kind of in the the shop, like the barrels are.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there, you know what I mean? And you get to see everything, like even Angel's Envy, if you walk in there, it's just kind of out in the open, you see the still and everything's glass. One thing I didn't know is that New Riff was actually created and visioned by Ken Lewis, which was the former owner of Party Source. I did not know that.
Really?
Which is kind of interesting. But yeah, he took, I believe that there was $18 million or $17 million to create New Riff. But it's taken 4 years so far to age this stuff. This is actually their juice. But before they were, I think for funding reasons and stuff like that, they were selling OKI. And most of you know that as Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and kind of their slogan is that it was it was made in Indiana, bottled in Kentucky, and loved in Ohio. Basically, was their slogan. So that's kind of like where that OKI came from.
Kind of presumptuous, I feel like.
Slightly.
I mean, like in general, it's loved in Ohio, or just like the people that
Well,
made
the
it?
last part, the third part is presumptuous. Because
I
is the corn in Indiana? Is that what they're getting at?
Yeah.
Corn out of Indiana,
So-
whiskey in Kentucky, and then
Yeah.
drunks in Ohio.
I don't know.
Enthusiasts. Enthusiasts and also drunks.
Yes.
I don't know about that,
Probably.
but you've heard us talk a lot, Brandon, about like MGP and like sourced whiskey and stuff like that. Well, OKI was a sourced whiskey. It was from MGP. That's in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So that's where that came from and stuff like that. But and that's the thing we've talked about numerous times, is that these distilleries that are trying to get off the ground are, they have to source whiskey before they actually start bottling their own stuff, because then there's no money coming in if they're barreling all this whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe that this stuff was just released. This new Riff single barrel was just released along with, I believe, 60,000 other bottles. Not this barrel, but they launched their bourbon on July 31st. So it's relatively a new thing. Just so you know, the notes on this, it tastes, I'm just reading it honestly off the bottle. I haven't got like
which is fine because not everyone's seen the bottle or has a bottle of it at their place.
Yeah, but so a lot of
Ray's commenting, by the way, about the cricket sound effects. Yeah,
great.
It's trying to help you guys be, soothed. It's like one of those white noise things while we're
lull them
talking.
to sleep.
Yeah.
As we yell
That's
at them.
really good at for.
That's how you get deep in somebody's mind. You just that kind of transition.
Inception, right?
Inception, yeah.
Yeah, that's how.
Leo DiCaprio.
Oh, great.
He figured it out.
All crickets.
So getting back to the whiskey, it's bottled and bond, and that's one thing too, is they're bringing back the kind of that old tradition of the bottled and bond that we've talked about numerous times. And they believe that it is kind of like a quality thing.
What does that mean?
So,
bottle and bond. What is that?
So Brandon's clearly a long-time listener as well as a guest.
yeah. Do you want to take this, Steve?
No,
or
go
do you-
ahead.
So bottled and bond means that it's under basically a governmental contract that it has to be distilled within under one distillation season. It's a lot of shit. It's like under one distillation season under the same of a government regulated warehouse, and it's got to be like a single barrel. Or not.
So the government gets their cut. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
One master distiller, one distilling season, and a government bonded regulated warehouse.
Yeah. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So we started kind of getting back on that with New Riff. They've kind of made a point to getting back on that track. So, but yeah, have you tried it yet, Brandon?
Yeah, I've been drinking a little bit.
What do you think of it?
Just smelling it just kind of sniffing it in. It's got kind of, it's kind of sharp. Like it's got kind of a sting going on, but it's drinking it is not like that at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that kind of sharpness. You smell it. It's kind of
It's kind of in your face.
kind of hits your nostrils a little bit.
I
But
think that's because it's such a young
it might be the not aged as much. Maybe it's not as mellow as it'll be down the road, but drinking it, it's smooth.
I think it's great for a 4-year. Here's the notes that they said on the bottle: toasted oak, caramel, clover, honey, and a faint taste of orange blossom. A developing warm spice through the finish, along with lingering vanilla oak.
Clearly.
I think they're just filling space on the wrapper.
It sounds
None of
nice,
that.
though.
You're just naming flavors at that point.
Yeah, but
Right,
if
so-
you haven't opened it, that's the marketing
Yeah.
behind it.
With marketing, but if they put that in your head, you're like, oh yeah, it tastes clover honey. Whatever. It's whiskey. It's good whiskey. So whatever.
I suggest we do it first here, and so we're gonna pause the recording.
Kill a cricket.
We're gonna see. So if you guys want to stay tuned live, we can stop.
We're gonna kill this.
we can stop, or you guys can stay tuned and see how hilarious this is. But I'm gonna pause this podcast real quick. We'll be back hopefully without a cricket. So stay tuned.
Let's get this
Steve's
fucker.
looking around like, where the
It's in that corner, right?
Yeah,
The problem is they stop when you get near it.
they're after it.
So here we're gonna do. It's gonna get loud real quick. Leave it. I got a solution.
Great. Now you ran away, and they don't know where it's at.
Watch out. We'll just.
Oh, look at that. Chemical warfare.
That's right. This is how you win.
win.
That's where it is.
I
think
think
so.
gonna smoke us out, man. We're gonna have to open that garage all the way.
I'm leaving it open for now.
But that shit rises up, I think.
Yeah, you'll be fine. It'll be an interesting podcast, won't
Yeah.
it?
Just be all.
Anyone tuned in still?
High
Yep.
up raid.
Yep. I love
Might be
it
the most
fast.
exciting podcast yet.
Yep.
I think he's coming back, man.
You think?
I think he hunkered down.
How do you hunker down, man? I think he's gonna have to breathe that in at some point.
Breathe it, eat it. I can smell it.
I see you guys have been weed whacking quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
That fucking spider web's like
Sorry about this, live viewers.
You know what?
Stick with
I am
us.
and I'm not.
It looks like a bed sheet, man. That thing's so thick.
You want to lay down in it? You can.
Maybe I will.
All right, let's just.
It smells all right.
It's country fresh.
Country fresh raid.
That's it.
Fucking Paul Waller.
What's he?
Hashtag Lives Matter.
See, the problem we got now, maybe more of his buddies
Did I
will
just
come
get
in.
him killed?
Ray, that's on you, buddy.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
on you.
His blood's on you, Ray.
Well, that's a first. Someone start up a lawnmower. Unorthodox, but I
Everyone's
mean,
bourbon spray will now ruin the nose of the whiskey. I beg to differ.
it's like I said, it's like Country Garden. It's a high class raid. I got nothing.
Should have done a barrier.
It's the raid with
I
blade.
kind of hit. Okay, this right there, man. Go ahead.
His friends are going to
Yeah.
come in for reinforcements.
You think? All right, we got 30 seconds. We'll come back on with the podcast here.
As Brandon sprays more.
Oh yeah,
Boom.
it's like fucking dropping napalm.
It's like the Maginot Line right there.
Yeah. Now we got the fucking prop plane back.
No lingering chemical odor.
That's Trump doing another pass.
All right,
It's always
close the garage, or
Back.
yeah, we're gonna come
It's the
back.
raid barrel proof.
I love how we still have 12 people on. That's awesome. Thank you guys for sticking
yeah.
with
Thank
us.
you.
This
That's
is the
13
first.
now.
Paul's probably like, we're sponsoring this.
You sponsored killing a cricket.
Oh boy! All right, there it is.
Let's get
Justin.
some of that raid money.
Get it, buddy. I think it's that. Oh, that was.
Was that a cricket?
That
Yeah,
was.
he gone.
If it was,
And
He wasn't moving too quickly. I'm just saying.
he's there.
Great. Awesome.
Smells country fresh in here.
Yeah, it does smell nice.
I learned
Ray,
recently.
Ray Cheshire says, I have you guys on the big speaker, and the cricket was clearer than Jake.
You gotta enunciate.
I guess.
And then Andy says, barrel strength raid. All right, let's come back here.
Yeah.
He gone.
All right.
So we finally killed a cricket.
We think. I guarantee it's going to come
He'll
back.
pop out.
We'll hear it here in about.
One of his brothers
30
or something will
seconds.
get
So
in
we
there.
killed a cricket.
And we might be high shortly
Yeah, maybe.
because of the.
Off the country time.
It smells good.
It smells fresh.
Country
If you guys run out of air freshener or candles at the house, raid.
Yeah.
I don't think that's good.
And if there's anyone working for Raid out there, we are looking for new sponsors.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's good advice at all on the rate.
just not in your open flames or.
People.
I think there's a warning label.
So,
What do you
Yeah, yeah.
I think Raid's lawyers are probably drawing something up right now. Like it says clearly on the bottle, do not use in enclosed spaces.
The window's open.
Eh,
I really like this actually.
Yeah.
I was sipping on Weller Antique 107.
I love the fact that when we first tried it, I know you don't like Weller 107. And
No,
yeah,
actually, I've purchased a few bottles. I actually do like it. It's I'm sorry, I do like it. I don't think it's something that I would just go to
yeah.
all the time. But when we're doing something like this, where we're trying something new, and then towards the the second half of the podcast, I don't mind drinking it. It's a good price point. I think it's a good price point. I think it's decent flavor on its own. Like the first glass I just had, it was a little rough. It was a little rough for me, but
Yeah.
I mean, I get it why for $26. It's not bad. Special reserve, I don't think I'll touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Because of the hangover thing.
Yeah, I mean,
It is bad.
I had a hangover. Speaking of which, I mean, that's something we didn't talk about was NFL football too.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
kind of had
But
that
I
in
was
my mind.
more
Yeah, I
working on that.
kind of had that in my mind, like talking about the week, but then
Alright.
we got sidetracked. Whatever. Do you want to talk about that?
The only thing I want to talk about is if by chance anyone from Rocky Patel, so if Rob, our rep, is listening, hopefully at some point to this, Nish Patel, who's been at the Smoking 10 event, the Patels are big Packer fans, and I'm a Bears fan, and we were all hanging out, and the Bears blew it. They were Christian. Don't cry, Steve. I was honestly no, I didn't cry because I was too drunk. So fuck you guys. I started watching football for the Browns game with my roommate at 1:30 at Fidel, our neighbor, and they did a great special. So anyone listening that's local on NFL Sundays, as far as for now, it's 40% off
Excellent.
your tab if you wear NFL gear.
yeah.
And I gave out.
Which you're going to be doing anyway, so
Pretty much, yeah. So it was great. And yeah, so like I said, I didn't really cry because I had been there for 10 hours-ish.
I've also been a Bears fan for a while, so at this point,
They did better than I thought.
not
They did
there
better
yet.
than I thought.
It was a good game. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was.
You were there all day too, Brandon.
I was there most of the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good.
And acquired NFL gear, which I don't have.
Now you
Now I do.
registered. You'll
Washed
probably
it.
lose it. Oh, you did?
Washed it yesterday.
Nice.
Might have shrunk down. Might not work anymore.
All right, anyways. But I'd say overall, these, someone said, how about those Browns? Yeah, absolutely.
Not losing.
They didn't lose. They tied. They kissed their sister.
Well done.
But I think the New Riff and the Rocky 20th is going really well together, actually.
You do?
Yeah, and the Country Fresh.
Country Fresh. Raid.
Cheers to Ray.
It's like we have like a bunch of like dryer sheets sitting out, you know what I mean?
You know what I've been doing recently?
I don't.
Because I read
Setting
it.
out dryer sheets?
No, I read it on the internet. I put that's why I've been doing it, because I read it on the internet.
Right.
Clearly.
Put a dryer sheet on the back of your fan, smells the whole place up. Real nice.
That's an old thing.
Is it an old
Yes.
thing? In the country, maybe. I grew up in the city, man. I didn't know about that.
I did that in college. We did that in college.
Really?
Yeah.
We used to blow. Never mind.
What?
In college?
Yeah. Never mind.
You probably shouldn't
No.
finish that.
Pass.
So Matt Bailey says, how did you pick that barrel of New Riff?
How did I pick it?
He was in Kentucky.
So I'm saying
It was at the distillery.
Yeah.
They had their kind of release last weekend with a little bit of bottles. Again, this was like the third installment that the distiller had done.
Okay, but this isn't something that you like pick the barrel.
No.
To clarify for Matt, like it's not necessarily. This was the bottle that was available at the time.
No,
so,
I am not that cool to do a barrel.
certainly not.
We want to get to that point. To do a Bourbon and BS podcast barrel would be pretty cool. So.
That would be very cool.
But
So now that we killed the cricket and we're getting into it here a little bit, we probably should.
talk about cigar.
Yeah, or anyone watching still should probably share it again. Get it back out there, but yeah, talk about the cigar a little bit.
This cricket threw you off, man.
It's it wasn't the smoothest start today for episode 32. We're in it this far, and we've had some. Kyle is waving. I don't know if he's waving at me or if he's waving
Trying to get the
cigar
right
smoke,
shot.
or he's waving at the Country Fresh Raid.
Trying to get a shot.
Just
That's
take our
all.
huff off it, man. Take a hit, like whip it.
It's like vape.
No, so
That's how that works.
the Rocky Patel 20th. This is the natural. We do have the Maduro at the shop also. If you want to try both, if you buy the 20th and get 15% off, you can get the Maduro for 15% off as well. But this cigar, basically, they have the decade that's done really well for them. They had the 15th anniversary, and then this is the 20th. So I mean, they've definitely been in it now for 20 years. They have some other. They have some other lines that have like 55. That's for Rocky's 55th birthday. So I mean, they can get a little bit confusing, I guess, in that regard. Just like I think Padron has the different, like the 1926, the 1964.
50th.
This does not mean that there's 20-year tobacco in this, but it is Honduran wrapper binder, and then there's Honduran from I believe it's the Llamas region, and then also Nicaraguan Esteli and Jalapa in there. So there is a little bit of Nicaraguan tobacco in this natural 20th, but it is, I think, a very good cigar. It does not, I will say this, it does not sell well.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And it hasn't for us. I don't know if anyone from Rocky Patel is listening right now on Facebook or tunes in later, but I mean, I don't know how it's doing across the board. I've always liked this cigar, actually.
One thing I'll throw out, just knowing the shop, is I like this smoke. I think it's really good. But it might be hitting that kind of middle ground between where a lot of the regulars like the fuller body stuff.
Yeah.
And then you've got a lot of the people that aren't regulars or just kind of stopping in, they're kind of casual smokers, gravitate towards more lighter medium or mild
Could
stuff.
be, yeah.
It might just be for our particular shop, it might be in that little spot where the regulars are like, it's a little too light for me, and then maybe it's a little too heavy for, the casual smoker. But I think it's a very good smoke.
Do we even sell like a lot of Rocky Patel stuff? Like,
Yeah,
like
we sell it quite a bit, yeah. Mainly you're going to be selling, like we like, obviously again with the staff, like, so you have the sun-grown Maduro sells really well, the Edge, still that whole series, the Maduros, Sumatras sell very well. B52 sell a bit to certain customers. The 1999 Vintage Connecticut is part of their vintage series, and that's going to be a real nice, mild, smooth smoke that competes with like Monte Cristos and Ashtons. And
I push that all the time
Yeah.
when I work there. If people wanted a good smoke, good mild smoke that looked nice and the price point was right, I push that all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, we do sell a lot of it, and obviously, even though Drew Estate makes it, it's through Rocky Patel as the Javas. The Javas sell like crazy, so that's a big part of their account. So Javas sell well, and we do sell quite a bit, but for whatever reason, these don't sell. Although Decades still sell very well. They killed it on this major rating back, obviously 10 plus years ago now. They hit a 95 on a rating, and they just rode that. I mean, like on all their banners, everything. They just rode that 95 rating, and it just killed it. And it is a good cigar. Don't get me wrong, but that definitely rolled for many, many years.
This is the first time I'm trying it, and I really do enjoy it actually. It's a soft box pressed, and do they make a round series of this, or is it just all?
I don't believe so. I don't recall. I don't think there is a round 20th.
I've only seen box press.
Yeah, I think they even did a Lancero, but that might have been a box as well, but I don't know for sure.
The funny part is that this was going to be Dustin's wedding cigar.
It was.
That is
One of my favorites.
Cricket.
Where's that cricket?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I bought a box of 10.
I had
Needless to
this.
say, I had 10 great smokes.
That's right. Yeah, no, I mean, there's some to smoke.
And transition.
I just know I was going to leave that on. I mean, I know, like, Jake and I talk about dead air and trying to avoid it, but that is very valuable dead air because of the awkwardness. And I enjoy awkwardness.
Well, plus the video, they can feel it.
Yeah, that's a lot going on.
It seems like we're just like having fun tonight, which I enjoy.
It's the raid.
Yeah, you're high right now.
Yeah, this is.
And the smoke haze.
Yeah.
But after trying the two, the new Riff single barrel and this, the Rocky Patel 20th, I think it is a good pairing.
I agree.
I'm getting this like weird like tinge in the back of my throat that's just lingering from the new Riff.
Getting the bug spray.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's a raid.
You think it's a raid?
Yeah.
So that just threw everything off.
Yeah,
This
that
is
might
just-
be it.
So we've had, and I want to throw this out here with the cigars and the bourbons that we've been drinking and smoking. Nate Hale mentioned last week during the podcast that he was going to go through and basically note everything down, and he listened to a lot of the podcast, kind of fast forward through a lot of it, but also listened to part of it to
He actually did
refresh.
all of it in a week.
Yeah, so he did all the episodes, and we'll probably have to include that we did have Country Fresh.
Raid on there.
Yeah, he said, and he just chimed in. He says, "You're not supposed to drink the raid. We have not had any
Drink it.
raid to drink. However, it might throw off. Just like when you eat like spicy food and have something like obviously that will affect your taste buds.
Or
I
you
think
light a
Country
candle
Fresh-
for dinner, something throws it off.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, based on this description on the notes, I will say that clover honey, I think, is very tannic in this. It's not a
Yeah.
sweet clover honey.
Yeah.
It's a tannic honey, if that makes sense. But that's what's kind of throwing me off. It's got that weird, it's without chill filtration.
Okay.
I don't know if that's thrown it off, but it's got a weird tannic thing going on, kind of like the 107.
Is that part of the age, you think?
Yeah, it's a young bourbon. I don't know.
It's got a little bit of heat, like a little bit of that
It's
that
young.
mineral burn.
It's young and it's 112 proof, so
Yeah.
it's hot anyways, and it's young, so.
It's hotter. I mentioned this before. It's hotter in the nose than it is drinking it.
It's very.
I feel.
It's very floral though. Like
It is. I mean,
and don't mention the fucking raid. It's not the raid.
Is it country flavor?
It's like a country garden.
No, the clover honey or whatever is throwing me a little bit because usually I kind of shit on those. I'm like, you're just fucking naming flavors. But
No, it's.
maybe, yeah,
I
maybe
agree.
a little bit.
I agree.
Wow,
Yeah.
Brandon. All right. You're actually believing.
If I were to ever bottle my own whiskey, though, all this bullshit about the notes and everything, I just say it tastes like whiskey.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I think a lot of it you're just kind of leading people like, oh, it's got this. Because you can pick up so many different things because whiskey's such a unique flavor. You can pick up whatever you want, really. Your mind's going to grab towards things that you know that you can define specifically.
You think?
You're saying it's subjective?
No, it's not subjective. It's just whiskey is a flavor in and of itself. But since it's not defined that way, you can throw all these other things out there like orange peel and stuff. And
well, it's like cigars too.
Exactly. Cigars are the same way. People throw out all this. If you have more than 5 descriptions of the flavors you're getting out of cigars, I call bullshit.
I like the ones that are actually, it tastes, in the first third, it tastes like these flavors, and then they say, in this order. Like, they actually not only like list off 8 things, they actually list off...
It's like a time release.
In order.
Yeah.
Like, I taste more lavender than I do barnyard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, come on.
I'll say
that's just, it's getting to the point that you're just making up your own job.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, it's
People are making money, so whatever.
I will say that the Rocky Patel is, I would say, creamy, rich. It's got rich flavor.
It's got, not the strength though. It's not that in your face like full Nicaraguan strength.
Yeah, but it's got really full flavor.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I'd like to see it. You know, listeners know you'd like to see it with a round. I'd like to see it as a round cigar, but I don't know. That's just my preference.
I like the soft box press on this one.
Yeah.
Christian just brought up something, and I think this is something we can talk about while we're on the cigars and the bourbon and just any real liquor, wines, stuff like that. He says, so you think that those labels subliminally plant those thoughts in your head? I don't think as much they subliminally do. I think it's more when I take a sip, or when I take a sip or I smoke a cigar, I start kind of formulating my own thoughts, but it's not necessarily refined. I think a lot of these things, especially as you smoke more cigars, you drink more bourbon, you drink more wine, whatever it is, you read these reviews. This is just like anything else, in my opinion. It's an agreed upon flavor. So it's like it's like I'm reading this, and in a bourbon, toasted oak caramel, clover honey. I've never had clover honey.
Yeah, you have. It's in the bear.
That's clover honey?
Yeah, it's clover.
It's just honey.
Most honey is clover honey.
Then why do you say clover honey?
So you can sell it.
Because it's floral. That's where that floral
and a faint taste of orange blossom. So my whole thing, orange blossom.
I've had orange blossom honey too.
Jeez.
Not bad.
How much honey do you eat?
Lots. Like Pooh Bear.
You're screwing up your points, dude.
No, I guess my point is to Christian out there is that basically like this whole like description, you start basically reading this, drinking this, and then you drink something else or smoke something else and read another description, and all of a sudden you start kind of training like, oh, this reminds me of this, which is this, and all of a sudden your brain starts thinking that way.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily they're planting these things in there. I think it's just agreed upon notes on the majority of people's palates. So if you say vanilla, a lot of people agree with what vanilla is, but when it's like a vanilla note, you're like, smoke it again or take another sip. You're like, okay, yeah, no, I kind of can get what they're talking about.
Has there never been a cigar like whiskey that you've had that you're just like there's nothing that instantly you think of when you taste it? You just think whiskey, smoke.
No, I mean I can pick out different flavors and things, and I can distinguish. Like we're smoking the Rocky 20th now. We're gonna smoke the Monte Cristo later. They're gonna taste different, but the specifics of leather or earthiness or honey or clover or whatever, they're kind of flags put in the ground, because defining flavor is I have no idea what you're tasting at any point, and I never will.
You're so skeptical.
You know what I mean?
This is why I'm excited.
I don't think that they're
Objective.
I don't think they're subliminally planting things in people's heads where they're trying to trick people. I think they're trying to lend a certain air or affluence to it, like you do with anything, with wine or cigars or whiskey or whatever else, where somebody that has actually taken the time to analyze this has analyzed it to the point, as far as maybe people can, given that none of us are ever going to know what leather tastes like to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's such a subjective, even color.
I think leather and earthy, like when it comes to especially cigars, leather and earthiness are the ones that are barnyard. They're like experiences. There's scent. There's like you can when you're walking through the horse stalls. The smell is so strong you can almost taste it. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of pungent
shit.
Yeah.
Well, that, the hay, and everything else, it's just that experience. It's like all your senses working together in a sense, or you know what I mean? So I think but again, that's the agreed upon, like what is earthiness? We've always talked about that. What is earthiness?
There's a
It's not
general
flavor.
vicinity.
Yeah.
It's not this. It's a general thing
Yeah.
of this is earthiness. I think another thing along the subliminal line that they're not doing and that they're conspiring against us, but of all the senses, smell is the most tied to memory.
Right.
Like everybody's had the thing, like most people tying things back to the shop, people come in and they smell the pipe smoke. They come in and they smell the pipe smoke, they have a memory of their childhood.
Yeah.
So
Dad,
smell,
grandpa.
smell is intimately tied to taste, and smell is more than any other sense tied to memory. So if they can name a few things there, they create a whole scenario in your head of the experience that you're going to have. And I don't think it's conspiracy. I think it's just they're working with how humans operate.
You think that, so you guys are saying that like some of these notes that people, put on these bottles or say in these reviews are more related to experience rather than
Absolutely,
smell and taste?
100%. Because like barnyard, nobody wants to smell a fucking barnyard. It smells like shit.
I agree. If
you
put
go
that
out
in
in the
brochure, it's like,
country-
hey, by the way, it's going to taste like barnyard. Do you want to
Yeah.
have this dish? You're like,
It smell like cow shit.
Why would I want to
But-
eat barnyard?
Especially like you talk about the Midwest, most people have some experience like of the country of either you go out on a Saturday, you have a nice breakfast, maybe your grandparents live out there, and you just have an experience in there.
Yeah.
That's what they're getting at. They're not getting at it smells like cow shit and horses. They're getting
Maybe.
at maybe for some people, but that's not your market.
People are into different things.
People that like
All I'm
cow shit
saying
and
is
horse
that
shit.
people are into
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
But most people are not into cow shit and horses.
So
And
Matt
the zoo is very popular.
Bailey was talking about he's tasted actually all three of these single barrels. He said, or four. So I didn't know that they had four, but he described like 310 as like mostly oak, but like there was citrus in 310.
This is 311.
Yeah, this is actually 311. So what did he say?
It says citrus on 311. You got
Balance.
287 was balanced and 288 was a high rye spice. So that's one of those things we talk about the single barrel thing. It's like different barrels definitely bring out different yields of product.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
I also think that like a lot with like the Four Roses single barrels, like you'll see that like remember when we were down there, Steve, and they told us about like the recipes, and this is what the notes were supposed to come off of, these certain recipes and stuff like that, and it seemed like for me that none of that was like true. You would think that like the OBSV side note, the OBSV recipe for Four Roses single barrel cast strength is the one that they also do for the Four Roses single barrel within like every liquor store. That's their recipe.
Okay.
And that's a high rye recipe actually, but it's supposed to be the sweeter of the 5 or the 10 different recipes.
I don't think it's sweeter when I think of rye, though.
That's
No.
my point.
Yeah,
That's
right.
my exact point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that's the most sought after like recipe of the 10. So,
Interesting.
yeah, but
I think going back to it, I mean, like that's the whole thing. You guys listening at home or wherever you're at on Facebook Live or on the podcast or whatever, it's one of those things where, I think even if we're saying it, I mean, we don't always agree. Sometimes we do about the flavor of the whiskey, about the cigar, but when it comes to it, again, if we think it goes well together, it doesn't always, like you guys can get the same bottle, the same 311, the same Rocky Patel 20th, and be like, those guys are nuts, this is terrible.
yeah.
But again, that's just how it works. Like to Brandon's point, it absolutely is. You don't know what other people are tasting, so it's more or less when things are popular.
Excuse you, Brandon.
It's one of those things that if things are popular, it's either people buy things or enjoy things for different reasons. Whether sometimes people do actually, they may not like it at first, and that's where you hear that like acquired taste.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times it's something that you try it because other people are trying it, or they enjoy it, and therefore you drink it. And it's like it's I take it back to like beer. A lot of times when you're growing up, you know, or smoke your first cigarette, you cough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you drink your first beer, like, oh my god, this is terrible. But then you have your second or third because you're hanging out with people that are doing it. Then all of a sudden you enjoy that taste in a sense because of your memory, like to your point.
Well, I think what it is,
Smell and
there's
memory and
a
everything
culture
else.
around it.
There's a culture
You get
around
acclimated to a culture around something that maybe it's, you know, based on your prior conceptions, it's gross at first.
Yeah.
But you get acclimated to the culture. Maybe you learn a little bit about the product, where it comes from, why it tastes this way.
Yeah.
Then it's a whole new thing. You're like, oh, that's not gross. It's different. And then you grow into the culture.
So in the cigar stuff we were talking about, I think I was talking with Brian today about it at the shop, is like the whole Cuban thing. We'll talk about that more next week, but it's when people talk about like, oh, I had this Cuban cigar, it was amazing. It could just be something that someone told them was Cuban, and they're on that vacation. It was like that utopia moment where it's
the whole environment,
everything, and that's where the memory. And I think I actually have a greater appreciation for Cuban tobacco or Cuban cigars, not as a whole, but the ones that we had, and we'll talk about that more next week, like I said. But because I was down there, now I have memories that are tied into it. Like Brandon and I, you know, hanging out at the house, going out to the fields, going to the shop, sitting like the whole 4 or 5 days.
Every
and
time
then
you
come
smoke
back.
one of those cigars that you bring back, you now think about that experience.
Yeah, and then it's like, it's almost like you have an identity to it at that point.
I think you do the same thing. That's why you like, not that Four Roses small batch is bad whiskey at all.
But yeah, being at the distillery.
But being at the distillery, you remember that, and I
Yeah.
remember how, like, you were very excited about that experience, and that, even though that was just a day trip that we did, you know, that was a really cool experience. I'm getting this, like, to get back to the new riff, I think that...
Back to the whiskey.
I think that you're going to laugh at me, but that clover honey, I think it's, like, right on the nose, to be honest, no pun intended.
We're talking clover honey
As
or
for,
beer?
I'll make
that's the only thing.
I'll make a concession of all those things I read. That was the one I'd pause on and say, all right, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that because it's not like necessarily sweet, but it's got this floral like perfume.
Well, honey has something behind it too.
It's
It's
got
not
a
sweet.
perfumey thing going on.
There's something behind honey too. Behind that sweetness, there's another flavor behind it, and maybe that's what.
There's some heat like in the throat,
Oh, yeah.
and it lingers. It's sitting there.
Here's an exercise. You take a label like this, right? And this is just, bear with me now. No, so you take some honey, clover honey, of course, out of the bear, right? Like we said?
Yeah.
Just regular honey then.
The bear.
Like
Yeah, the bear, the
like
squeezed
for,
bear,
you
the
know,
squeeze.
Oh,
come on. Anyways,
I was thinking of like face value. Like
No.
what bear do you have?
so my thing is like, all right, so you take a glass of something like this, you read the label, you do, so you get some caramel, right? And you kind of like melt it over some oak, and then you take some of that honey, and then you take an orange blossom, like you said, you've had orange blossom tea.
No, honey. Orange
Okay.
blossom honey.
So they maybe take
Dark.
the orange blossom honey and the clover honey, you mix them together, right? And then the warm spice, it says lingering through vanilla oak, so you just add a little like
Vanilla extract.
Yeah, and then you put that like in a little
What was that
concoction. I don't know if they can hear that, but no. So you put that in a little concoction next to it, and I'm interested to see.
There you go. If they're on point there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Another.
I don't have any of those ingredients.
Yeah.
Steve.
Do you have the oak?
We do have.
We have
a
oak
barrel
right
stave.
there, yeah.
We have a
Okay.
barrel
I don't know how we're
stave.
gonna work that in because we don't want to just. Maybe we'll
You dip it.
soak a little water in that
Just-
oak and then
Yeah.
put it in there.
Again, he's got
There's
this.
sound effects.
Here's another concession I'd like to make for this conversation that we're having. Is
Between Ray and this like John Gibson guy, like
all the shit that I'm
John says this sounds good over waffles.
all the shit that I'm talking about. You can't name flavors and all this stuff. I will concede 100%. I can't smell that well, and so I may be like
What are you even doing here?
no, I may be like Ray Charles calling bullshit on fireworks because he can't see them.
You're talking about flavor though.
No, but it's still a sense. I'm saying that.
Are you saying that Ray Charles couldn't taste bourbon?
I'm saying that I may be like people who are colorblind or just blind. I may be flavor blind.
I love it. See, I'm excited.
It's possible.
I really wish.
Handicap, yeah.
I really
Like,
wish.
limited.
I'd like
could
to
have
park
been down
closer to the store.
Cuba for this shit because the story behind what was his name down in Cuba,
Mongo.
Steve?
No,
That was
Mongo?
just in the
Mongo.
That was
So-
only in the pool.
So Brandon had an alter ego that was a gorilla in a
Well,
pool.
we kind of like.
I was just drunk, really.
He was drunk. I started calling him Mongo. Then
This is a really
I
good
started
story.
videotaping him. This is like a 3-something in the morning, and so Mark was asleep, but Brad and I were
He was
sitting
trying
up
to
there.
sleep before
Yeah, he
he
said he
dies.
could not sleep because he could hear us. But yeah, so I started kind of like saying this, and then all of a sudden I pan over to Brad, and he turns into what's his name?
Steve Irwin.
Steve Irwin. Yeah, so he turns into that, and it was a lot. It was funnier after, but I mean, it was definitely, I think, more funny. It was funnier when we were doing it because we were hammered.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, everything's funnier
That's-
when you're drunk.
107, but
That's a fact.
Okay. Jeez, Brandon.
Sorry. Well, that's all. That's it.
Yeah, I'd hope.
Just
all
open
right.
it
Well,
up.
we got water on the iPad.
Sorry.
It's
Uh,
waterproof,
all right,
man.
real
It's
quick,
annoying.
saving it real quick.
yeah, we're gonna save real quick. Be right back.
We're still live. I mean, people can see.
I know that's why I did
us.
the whole kind of hand waving thing with the smacks and the.
Yeah, but that doesn't do anything for them.
They are.
They know we're done.
They're still watching us right now.
But
Ray Charles watching fireworks.
Do you really say that about fireworks?
Yeah, he did. Everyone missed that piece.
Was that wrong?
5 ounce
But
Is it really?
he goes, me.
No,
Why'd you give me such a big glass?
It's an
I can't
adult
tell,
fight.
man.
You're
It's
not a
all-
child.
It's all fucking relative to the glass. I poured it 1/5 of the glass. There you go. You have yourself some.
Oh yeah.
Dump it on the table.
Yeah, perfect.
Get yourself a straw.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back. We've got some major comments going on, mostly about Brandon not being able to smell or taste or.
Allegedly. I don't know if I can or not because I don't know what other people smell or taste.
Yeah, but I mean, Ray did actually kind of bring it back surprisingly that that smell is a big part of what you taste.
Well, no, yeah, they're deeply connected.
So I just put some water in the new Riff. Like
And
we
so
said,
the new riff on the table.
yeah, a little bit. So, like we said, it is 112 proof, so it's a little hot at barrel strength. But I think it actually toned it down a little bit. That heat on the back
sure.
end.
You typically would, yeah.
That heat on the back end, it's actually super sweet now. So maybe just like a touch of water.
Really get that clover honey coming out.
More honey than clover. So, but yeah.
Yeah,
I love when you two get together.
With a touch of bear.
it's interesting conversation for sure.
That does. You put a little water in mine too. That does really tone down the heat.
Yeah,
Oh
soften it
yeah,
down.
absolutely.
I wanted to just, before we move on to the next subject, because I have no idea where it's going to go, and I would say so far, episode 32, besides when Brad Grimsley was on, who's going to be on next week, besides the last time he was on, when I had to actually edit out about 20 minutes of it because he and I were so drunk off the bookers that it was just incoherent. And this is before we did live, thank God.
I
Yeah.
just gave up. at
If
the
we
end of
were
it.
doing live that time, it would have been like, yeah, no, I'm not going to share this one. Oh, we lost that file too. Oh, weird. But Rocky Patel, I want to say we haven't talked about Rocky much.
No.
So Rocky Patel, the interesting thing about, in my opinion, how this started was he was an attorney for a long time, and it even says the starting year on here, 1995. He made a move into the cigar industry. Now, I don't know if he completely shut down his practice or what he was doing, but that's when he moved on. Now, they've blown up in those 20 years, where now he's gone on from just, it was called Indian Tobacco or Indian Tobacco when they first started, changed it, put his name on it. They got Nish Patel, his brother, that's involved. You got a couple other people that were involved early on, like Nimish, and so they've expanded so much that they've got a couple factories. I think they own some fields. They have some of the best now cigar lounges in the country, and they're expanding that line. The Burn Lounge started in Naples, but so it's one of those things where you have a guy that was successful in a previous career, and I don't recall the reason that he did, but he wanted to move out of that.
Yeah.
And I know in a couple
Are
of
you okay with the?
Yeah.
What's your throat doing
I
there?
don't know. It's probably the raid.
Put a little water in.
Jesus.
But no, it was one of those things that you see this person that moves into a new industry and he's killing it over 20 years. It's a long time.
Yeah.
So he now has, like I said, he's got the Burn Lounges. He has all the huge portfolio. This is a company that puts out 5-6 new blends every year.
Nate said about 25 million cigars annually.
Yeah, I mean they're absolutely huge. Now with that being said, it's funny in the retail side of it, you have people that really like Rocky Patel, and you also have people that don't like Rocky Patel because they tried it like 5 years ago. They had 1 or 2 Rocky Patels and like, oh, I don't like that. I didn't like it, and you're like, well, what did you try? Much like we talked about Alec Bradley before, I think Alec Bradley is getting to that point, not necessarily scope of business, but as far as reputation in the industry where, you know, I had an Alec Bradley, I don't like their stuff. I had a Rocky Patel, I don't like their stuff. Where a lot of these other big ones like Altadis, General, they have different name brands. So not everyone knows that Monte Cristo is owned by
catch-22 of a brand. If you
Right.
catch somebody in a brand, they love it, it's good for the brand. If they have one and they don't like it, they're like, I don't like the whole brand. Which may be a ridiculous statement if they were to try other things.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like he started off mainly with Honduras stuff, and now he's doing Nicaraguan stuff over the last several years. And I didn't care for a lot of the Rocky Patel stuff until he did actually start introducing more and more Nicaraguan tobacco personally. But I just want to make a point that, you know, we've had Nish at the 10 event several times here in Columbus, Ohio. One time he actually was toting down his suitcase to World of Beer after Fidel was shutting down one year, and
He's the one that's like dressed to the 9, right? Like
He is,
he's
he's
always
done
done
and
up,
shit,
and it's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those. So he's great, and Nate says the closest burn is in Pittsburgh. So
Is that the one that all the guys go to at the shop? They go to Burn in Pittsburgh?
no, not they just started because that just opened.
Oh, okay.
Burn in Pittsburgh just opened. I think they're going to do one in Indianapolis as well as the plan.
I know there's a between, like, it seems that like it's Pittsburgh, Columbus, and like Indianapolis is kind of I guess a cigar, like, I don't know, road,
Mecca.
trail, whatever.
Very
something like
saturated.
that.
They're very saturated. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because between like the guys at the shop, they go Indianapolis, and then they'll take a weekend and go to
Pittsburgh's fun.
Pittsburgh.
I've been to Pittsburgh with on our way to Cigar Fest that one year with Brad Grimsley and then also a couple of guys. But it was very cool because there's a lot of different shops. It's just as saturated, if not more so, in my opinion, than Columbus. But the big thing is that the shops are so different and they all have big, strong followings. It's not saying that we in Columbus don't have that, but there's no, from what I don't want to say drama or anything like that, but it's just they're dramatically different. So again, like with Burn going in there as a high-end kind of nightclub feel lounge, and then you have Blooms who they have everything under the sun, including stuff he doesn't know about that's been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
But they also have strippers in there on Saturdays or, like whatever. I mean, that's
Different clientele, different markets.
very big. Very big. So it's a good place. It's a good place. Indianapolis is also, and I haven't been there as much, but Pittsburgh is great. And like I said, with this, I'd like to see more Burn lounges go up. But at the same time, from a retail standpoint, as soon as the manufacturers start throwing up lounges and retail stores, that's where it's a little tougher that they're now diving into. It's like when Nike puts up a store right next to like a Foot Locker.
Right.
Like, or even like a small, like back in the day, small mom and pop, like sporting goods store.
Are these Burn lounges only selling Rocky Patel?
No, they sell a lot of different stuff.
Oh,
My
okay.
point is like, so if a Burn lounge goes in near Easton,
Yeah.
that's going to affect business big time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because it'll pull some of that clientele with the days of
Now,
Uber.
do they do
taxis
liquor
and stuff.
too?
Yeah, it's full blown. So
Which would be tough in
Ohio
Ohio,
would be tough.
because Ohio would be.
we've got a shop here in the area that's trying that, and I don't know if they're gonna last. I don't know how they're gonna, like, they're probably, I assume they have to fudge their numbers at some point. So it's a matter. It's a shop over in the Hilliard area near the casino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that you have to play by the rules, but at the same time, it's how far down are they looking into the rules.
I still can't
Also,
figure
who
out.
you know, too.
Who you know and stuff like that.
I still can't figure out like how Elton does it at like Prohibition up in Powell, and like I hope like we didn't like
That's why you don't name it.
fuck him up.
Sorry, it's a little stuff in here tonight.
Yeah,
Edit that
It's
out.
the
I'll
raid.
just be
No, it's
done.
the raid.
I'll just be done with that. But he's like associated with Stogie, so
I went to
Well-
one in Indy, the Blend Lounges by Davidoff.
Hopefully you guys can hear Dustin on the podcast here. Go ahead.
When I was training in Indianapolis with work, when I first got into management, there was a shop about 1 mile, 2 miles from the hotel I was staying at. It was the Blend. It was a Davidoff.
Yeah, Blend, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Davidoff lounge. Had a walk-in humidor with a rolling wooden ladder to grab boxes off the top shelves. But they had their own bar, which is the point that Nate made that the best ones in Indy have bars too. It had its own bar, huge whiskey list.
Yeah,
food.
Indiana is they have different state laws, and so we're actually gonna and I think that'll be good to talk about that. Kylie from Nat Sherman is coming on the last week of this month, so 2 episodes.
Like 24.
She worked for Blend in Indianapolis for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get a lot more information, but that's a good point because it does. Every state by state has different laws.
Yep.
So that's where Pittsburgh is totally different. But now I'm hearing different things about Pittsburgh had 0% tobacco tax. Now I'm hearing rumor that they're going to be Cigars International and something else. Another big one is going to actually move all their operation out of Texas because the threat of tobacco tax is getting so real. They've tried it so many times that you're going to go from 0% tobacco tax to 40 online sales. You're fucked at that point. The reason that they were
Margins
there,
are destroyed.
yeah, exactly. So it'll be totally different. But
Well, I mean, what would you guys? We don't do a lot of ratings, but what do you guys rate this pairing? With
Good.
Rocky Patel.
17.
1 to 10 or 0 to 10.
I don't know.
wait, no.
I
Before you say that, what was 17 based off of?
random number. It's a
Right.
prime number. That's it.
It's fair.
Yeah. I just picked a prime number. Find it's good to throw out primes when you can.
Got it. So, truth be told, we did, if you're watching the video, where Brandon's sitting over here, that's where we sprayed most of the raid.
Yeah.
So probably a good time to start in on morals, right, Brandon?
And it's funny, you can see the smoke in the video just lingering tonight.
Yeah, it's
we had,
sick.
so what we had, if you guys are watching all over, but like Ray, I'm sure you have seen it on the news. There's that tropical storm that came up the middle of the country, up the Mississippi. Now you got the one coming in. So we went from 90 degrees down to 60 degrees, and now we are in the midst of, today was I think a high 70 something.
But
tomorrow's pushing the 80 mark. I think
Oh,
over 80s. So it's that's what you're seeing in this video here, and we're hoping to get some more ventilation in the garage. We'll see.
Get a window
Sponsors.
fan. Just suck that right out of there.
Hopefully we'll get some sponsors to help us out with that, or might move at the end of the year, and hopefully I'll buy a house that has a smoking room.
Yeah, there you go.
That's,
Well, Brad, get Brad's old house.
Okay. Anyway, so I don't know, when I brought up moral dilemma, we started talking about the subjects here for this week, and moral decisions, morals in general, it was on our list to talk about.
My idea of it was when we first were talking about it was just doing how morals differentiate between people. But I think we can touch on that, but we've definitely jumped ship, if you will, to issues that maybe our lives have. You have issues with thinking about things, what you should do or what you shouldn't do. It's kind of like the devil or the angel on your shoulder with something.
Well, so you just did exactly what I was saying, when we were talking about it, is that when you brought in the angel and the devil, which, is done, obviously it's based off of some religious background, but I think before we get too far into moral dilemma, I think that's why I wanted to also, we were talking about it, we wanted to have Brandon on here is because you have different backgrounds. So just as a recap, where you talk about morals in general, and religion is definitely a way for a lot of people to justify morals, in my opinion. And that's where the upbringing for me is I was raised in the church, Lutheran church and we're not going to get into religion or politics, that's the big thing here, but...
I might.
Yeah, that's fine.
I know you might. That's why I'm excited.
My point is, full disclosure disclaimer here is that I don't want to turn this into a religious podcast by any means, because, and if you are offended, don't be offended, because this is what the conversation is when it gets to this point, when you talk about a subject like morals. Because even in politics, you have the conservatives and the liberals, and everyone's religious, but this is a different type of religion, all that stuff. My background is Lutheran church. Growing up, I do base a lot of my morals at the core based on the teachings that my family unit pushed through that as a teaching method, but also you know, that's the core of it. At the same time, it's what you learn in school and everything else from the secular side of it. But I mean, it's all intertwined. I'm no longer, in my opinion, I don't want to say my opinion, I guess, I'm no longer a practicing religious person. Yeah. And so, like, I had that core, but also it's now been, in a sense, immersed in more of the secular, if you will, side of it. So when we talk about morals, that's kind of my background. Jake, I can give you a quick synopsis of that as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was raised on United Methodist. Obviously, I didn't dive so far into it that I don't know the difference between like Lutheran and United Methodist or what the practicing teachings are. But, you know, I think I did want to say that, you know, morals, I believe, change like throughout your life. And, you know, at first when you're young and a kid, you're taught your morals. And then you kind of have this belief, and then as you get older, and then probably like high school or whatever, and you start like actually having the opportunity to think for yourself, then you kind of create this own little circle, if you will, of your moral thoughts and your moral compass. And, you know, you'll have people that tell you like this is right and this is wrong, but this is kind of like what you want to do, and this is what you don't want to do.
And again, that's that experience, yeah.
Yeah, so... But that's what I have to say about it. I think morals is a huge thing. I think it protects a lot of us from like doing decisions that maybe we shouldn't do. But you know, that's
Brandon, what's your background?
Yeah.
I was raised initially in.
Before we get into the moral discussion, I'm trying to get it around the table.
I was raised initially in a Lutheran church when I was around maybe I don't remember the exact timeline, 10 or 12. Went to a church that claimed Baptist, but it was more of the contemporary, we're cool because we play electric guitars type of church.
Contemporary services and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
they claim Baptist because I think maybe you have to be affiliated. I don't know how church works now, but maybe you had to be affiliated with something, so they claim Baptist.
Yeah.
They did a lot of singing and putting your hands up, so maybe that's Baptist.
That's first Baptist. No,
yeah.
Southern. There's Southern first, I don't know.
So I started... Actually, when we were still in the Lutheran church, I started kind of calling bullshit on stuff. I was maybe 10 or 12.
Which is ironic because that is exactly where the Lutheran church came from. And we're not going to get into that, but Martin Luther...
he called bullshit on the Catholics.
Yeah.
But when I was 10 or 12, I started kind of calling bullshit. I started asking questions my parents couldn't answer. They think me the priest. I thought the priest answer was bullshit. By the time I was 14, maybe 15... I had done, not a reversal, I was just like, all right, I don't believe this. So I read a lot of Anton LaVey's work, Satanic Bible.
At 14?
Yeah.
Satanic
Bible, whatever his other stuff was. I read that, and there was other stuff like anybody that's into occult shit, like Set, who's an ancient Egyptian god affiliated with the devil now.
Yeah.
You know, things like just darker occult shit. Because I was like, all right, if I don't believe this, let me go full blown to the other side, see what they're doing, and then I'll, just get a holistic picture.
So this is self-taught, like in a sense that you're reading different works by different organizations or leaders of different, like you're saying, cults and
right. And at the same time that I was reading like Satanic Bible and all that, I started reading Eastern philosophy, primarily Zen. D.T. Suzuki was a big guy that introduced Zen to the West. Okay. And the Eastern shit just made a whole lot more sense to me. So at the same time I was reading the kind of the darker or, the evil Western stuff, I was reading the Eastern stuff as well. The Tao Te Ching, D.T. Suzuki's work, and a couple other Zen books. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind was one of the first books I read. I think I was 14. And that's still the foundation of kind of my moral universe. Like, if I have to come back to kind of a compass or a center, the Zen Buddhist stuff is more the center. I went to the other edge of Christianity, down into the Satanism and all that, just because my whole life people were saying, hey, don't look at that, don't look at that, don't look at that.
So you do.
I was just like, fuck you, I'm going to look at all of it and see what's going on there. And then I'm like...
You had a foul mouth as like an 11-year-old or whatever this age is.
Probably, yeah, a little bit.
And I know your parents, so like, especially your mom, like, God, She's a saint.
They were not into it.
Yeah.
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 I think it's interesting that you went like the other way and you wanted to see both sides of it. And
Yeah, I wanted to see the complete opposite.
and make your own decisions.
So before we move on to that religion, like that was like all religion. I want to skirt around that if possible. Through
That's
the
not where I was
conversation.
That's going to be.
You think that's where I was going?
It's
Where do you think I was going?
I don't know. Go ahead.
That's going to be a center that we're going to have to ring around.
Yeah, and
You know what I mean? Because
go
you can't escape the religion.
Finish it.
No, I was just saying like you went to both sides, and it doesn't matter like whether it was like religion or not religion related.
Right.
But you just wanted to see both sides and to make a decision for yourself. Like that's what I was talking about, like a moral circle.
Right.
For your own.
I wanted to see the
belief.
stuff. I wanted to see everything that everybody told me not to see, because I don't trust other people to make decisions. So I wanted to see.
When did that start though? Like
I was probably like 8 or 10. I don't know.
you just like woke up one day and was like, I'm just.
I
gonna
didn't
make my
woke up.
decision.
It's a
I
curiosity thing.
I didn't wake up one day. I mean, I was always a kid that was just why.
Oh yeah, that's not normal.
And I still no, but I still do that to this day. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think
You are still a child.
It's,
I agree.
yeah, agree. It's just part of my personality. Is like if you tell me, hey, this is 99% of it, but don't worry about that 1%. I don't give a fuck about the 99% now. I want to know about the 1% you told me not to know about.
Well, I think that's not a bad thing. I think like when I was like in college, for example, and we did it when I was in high school and I was more involved in the church. Well, I did a religion thematic sequence at Miami, and we studied but it was more like Judaism, and it was like
It was just a theology.
it was like
class.
branches
The
off
major
of-
religions.
major religions, but it was still like Judaism, and then it was like Greek Orthodox. It was still like branches of more of that European
Yeah.
Right.
side of it. It never really branched. I did look into a little bit, but not to your level of like Buddhist and Muslim and stuff like that. Like just have a very basic treetop level version of what that's about. But I think there's a lot of value there. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, like, and I'm not getting into religion too far, and it's really tough not to. But it's that
You're gonna do it.
no, it's the faith like a child, and that's what I'm saying is that it's ironic, in my opinion. What I'm hearing with Brandon is that, as a child, he's saying why, where when a lot of times, a lot of the religions are based on, or morals in general are based on, and like I said, it doesn't have to just be religion, but it's also morals. It's what you're being taught is right or wrong.
Right.
Where you start with that question, well, why? Well, a lot of times people will say, well, why? As children or someone entering into an organization, you're going to get that why, and they're going to be like, because that's how it is.
Yeah.
I never.
Well, no,
accepted
but you know this for a fact, Brandon. I've known you for a long time. There are so many people in your life that is exactly where they stop.
Right.
Until they go crazy later.
Right.
And they're like, okay, this is how it just doesn't feel right. And there's I think it's not because you're losing it, it's not because of anxiety, it's not because and there are those real things of anxiety and chemical imbalance, but it's not always based on that. And I think that's where a lot of people go to, is because it numbs you in a sense on the Western, you bring in the Western medicine side of it. It's like, oh, hang on, you're starting to get a little too far out there. Here's a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's like, let's get you recentered back into your little safety net culture here.
But that has diminished, like
I
within
disagree,
the last
man.
20 years or so.
I think.
I think that whole 60s, 70s, and 80s, that
So what's diminished?
I was getting to that, but the whole that baseline of Christianity and what you're supposed to do.
Oh, that's diminished for sure.
Because
I thought you were talking about the kind of the Western medicine.
Yeah, that's
Here's a
that's
pill.
yeah. That's what I
Has
was
diminished.
thinking.
well, yeah, I mean it's basically just gone to weed anyways. So I mean,
Not yet.
Opiates are still
Trust me,
used.
and that
Pharmaceutical-
CBD
No,
stuff
pharmaceutical
is,
companies
all over
will not
the
let it
place.
go
CBD
that
is
far.
fine.
Hey, pharmaceutical companies will not let it go to that. They have so much money tied up into fucking just chemical pills that
Oh, I know.
they're gonna win. They have more money at this point. Although I heard Jimmy Buffett's gonna get into the weed business, so that's cool.
Yeah,
And
he's already
Wrigley.
started.
Yeah.
There's actually a place out in Colorado, Jimmy's,
Well, no, they're going big now with so it's Jimmy Buffett and the Wrigley family.
Oh,
So they're doing billions of dollars into it that they're gonna.
Oh, okay.
That's,
I know they
that's
are.
because the dam is broken.
Yeah.
The feds are holding out, but the dam is broken on weed. Weed is gonna just.
Well, I think there's
steamroll.
something we might jump around a little bit tonight because we are talking about morals and it's tough to
Well, a
really
lot of
down
people
that.
bring drugs into morals, so that
Yeah,
means
here's
so
a moral,
that's
like,
my whole
challenge.
thing is that you look at my point is like with weed and everything else, alcohol went through prohibition. We talk about alcohol a lot, obviously, with the whiskey and bourbon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, oh, drinking's wrong. Smoking, I'm lighting up. Brandon and I are both lighting up a Monte Cristo. Not a shameless plug. This is our second cigar. It's a Monte Cristo Classic.
Yeah. Thank you all to this.
All to this. But this is our second cigar of the night. And there's a lot of people, we talk about this on Whiskey Wednesdays, that a lot of people don't really understand what we're doing until you actually either come in the garage or you're listening to it. If you hear a blowtorch in the background, that's Dustin. He's actually doing some light welding in the background.
Yeah, literally with that thing.
But no, I think it's something that, with weed or with CBDs and all that stuff, you see the evolution through the generations and the different societies and the cultures, and then also the governments clearly is the ruling factor of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about agreed upon what's right or wrong. And it's, you can talk about like nutrition. We used to, we were going to talk about doing another health or fitness podcast. It's one of those things. It's like you read one article that this like milk is really, really good for you, and then it's like, oh, too much milk is bad for you, and then it's like, oh no, wait, you can't have enough milk. You see that, so it's not necessarily morals, but it's like it's an agreed upon right or wrong.
Well, and that's all that, like, the licensing stuff, like with the prohibition was. I mean, it had been fought for decades before it was actually passed, and then it was never reinforced because everybody thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
And then
And it caused more problems than it was worth.
yeah, and then the government decided, they saw how much money was being like put towards it. Like, I mean, look at Al Capone, like back in the day. He based his whole mafia off of pretty much alcohol. That's how that got started.
But
and then well, I mean, we talk about morals like changing. Well, I did at the beginning, but it's like I never thought that I was always told, like everyone else, like drugs are bad, don't even like associate it with it. So when I was in high school, I was always, if I knew a person like did drugs, like I didn't even talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I look back at that and like
Like, was that awkward? Like when they said hi?
wait.
When they said hello,
Did they say hello and you just didn't talk to them back?
Yeah, I just didn't.
You just walk
I
by.
didn't. Yeah.
Did you turn around and walk away?
Yeah.
or keep going, Sandra.
I mean, that's how
stiff you were.
That's how stiff, but like dependent, like
Right.
of what my parents said.
You believe that's what
at
it
the
was.
time. Yeah,
that's not
but-
necessarily wrong
but see, right now-
for a kid to
Yeah.
believe, but
But like my moral compass
Parents
now
can be
is like I don't like weed, but tax the shit out of it, and if people want to smoke, I'm fine with it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's me, changing my moral code, if you will, and deciding like it just doesn't matter that much.
Right.
Like, it doesn't mean that I want to go do it, but I'm not going to stop someone else.
Or
from
here's
doing it.
a moral question from kind of a libertarian view of, and I wouldn't claim to be a libertarian, but from their view is, if you're going to bring a moral element into something like weed, you could say that somebody's immoral for smoking weed. That's a hard sell, because now if they're immoral because they're high all the time and they can't support their family and they don't have a job and they're a layabout and they're sucking off their friends and family, fine. And if weed is a contributing factor to that, fine. But the moral failure is not the weed, it's that they don't have a job, they're not taking care of themselves, they're not fending for their family, they're not taking care of their family, they're not pulling their weight. That's the real moral failure. And for each individual, maybe for some individuals, weed just takes them down a rabbit hole where they're gonna fall into those other moral failures. But the weed itself is not a moral failure.
Isn't the
there
same
may be-
as alcoholism?
Alcohol is the same thing. And so there may
You
be
said alcoholism.
alcohol,
That's what I said.
not alcoholism.
So
Alcohol,
if you're not an alcoholic,
but see, I think in saying that, you may be conflating the fact that if you smoke weed casually or have a drink casually or have it in a way that you're not an alcoholic and dependent on it,
right,
it's not alcoholism.
right.
So somebody
That's what I mean.
somebody that may be able to go and smoke a joint at the end of the day, relax after a hard day's work, and they're working, they're paying their taxes, they're
Yeah.
taking care of their family, there's no moral failure there.
Yeah.
But the other end of it is if you're going to say that, let's say 5% of people are susceptible to this rabbit hole via either alcohol.
You're talking about addiction.
Addiction.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good to just.
No, because that is. I mean, that's what it is. Because that's
No.
where you're going. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You can be social media addicted.
Doesn't matter.
You know,
Addiction
whatever.
is perfect. So let's say 5 to 10% of people may become addicted to a certain chemical, whether it's weed, alcohol, mushrooms. Not really with psychedelics.
You're not even introducing the fact that, like, genetically or scientifically, like, you might be predisposed to that.
You may be predisposed, but if you do the statistics on it, 5 to 10% of people are either going to be a complete fuck up if they get involved with alcohol or weed. And people see that, and they see the damage that small percent of people cause.
Yeah.
And now they attribute, hey, if we can just get rid of alcohol, which they did in the 20s, or we can just get rid of weed, which they've done for the last 70 years, then we can eliminate that. But in the course of doing that, you've empowered criminals, you've shuffled billions of dollars into the black market, you've necessitated a state apparatus like the DEA or any other paramilitary organization.
I'm sorry, whenever I hear that word, I think of the other guys. We've created a breathing apparatus that's made out of kelp.
Yeah.
My word.
That's a great movie, by the way. A lot of TLC.
Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell.
Hey, by the way, real quick, while I break, like, Bram does not lose his train of thought unless he is high. But typically not when you're high.
No.
Yeah. Are you high right now?
No.
Okay.
Maybe off the rail.
Anyone watching right now, I saw Josh Bentley, Liz, Stephen Charles. We had some new listeners. Share this stuff right now because it's about to get, I think.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm about to say.
I'm excited.
I was upset with myself for saying that.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that
Kelp.
you start with this perceived moral failure, which is not inaccurate in that certain people fail in their responsibilities as an adult, as a human, as a father, mother, sister, brother, whatever. They fail in their responsibilities when certain chemicals are introduced. That's 5. Let's say it's 5 to 10% of the population. Let's say it's 15.
We don't know the statistics.
We don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
You look
But
like a scientist, though.
a little bit.
You're talking about
You're the only guy
we're black rather than
You're the
white.
only guy in the garage with a collar.
That's true.
So clearly you're smart.
I planned
in
that.
jeans and dress shoes.
And so you have that, let's say there's moral scales. You have that. Let's get rid of all weed and alcohol. And 10 to 15% of the people won't fuck up. In reality, at least 5% are still going to fuck up. So, but on the other side of that, in order to enforce that moral standard or that perceived moral standard, you have to create such a massive government apparatus that it's going to take away people's liberty. It's going to give the state the power to, if they think maybe you're selling weed, they can kick in your door, they can take all your stuff.
It's enforcing.
They can separate your families.
All right.
And so what is that moral hazard that's been created by trying to avert this small moral hazard over
Good
here?
question.
That's more the libertarian
But
view.
do you think that's just because of, like, do you think that just with weed? Or, like, how, I mean, I hate to, like, dive down this rabbit hole, but I'm really curious to hear, like, what your answer is about, like, other...
Heroin and meth?
Yeah, like...
Heroin and meth are fucked, but at the same time, I
But
think...
how do you differentiate
No,
that?
let me interject because I want to. Is that there is absolutely, it's all about definitions of what's illegal, what's morally wrong, and I think those especially in America, those get intertwined and they get substituted for each other.
Right.
Morally right, morally wrong, legal, illegal.
Yeah.
So it's all about agreed upon definitions. So it's like, what's a drug? Caffeine's a drug. You're allowed to drink as much caffeine as you fucking want. You can drink 18 Red Bulls in a row and not be thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely terrible for you. And you are going to behave completely worse in a sense, and probably be worse on your body than smoking 18 joints.
Yeah.
In a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
But that's okay because that's legal. That's legal. Now, is that wrong? Absolutely. Is it morally wrong? People say, no, it's not morally wrong. It's just that poor child. Well, that poor child's like fucking 42 years old and he's trying to just get through it. And he doesn't want to do Adderall because that's not morally right. Or he doesn't have or he hasn't been to a doctor to do, go through the channels because that's the agreed upon way to do it.
Right.
Or if with you're talking about weed or CBD or whatever, there's a lot of like these stress release. There's relief. There's the focus in a sense that people don't realize that is also a byproduct for some people that are all over the place. That it brings them back down to a focus point.
I know one of the biggest things is like inflammation, like reduction.
But so like I don't want to like get off of weed completely, but when you were about to go down the whole of heroin and what's agreed upon as drugs, that's the problem. That's where we have the cricket back.
Motherfucker.
Son of a bitch. But my point is that I think that's where it gets down to when we're talking about morals. It's not only about the morals, but what you go back to the core of that, or what the society that you're involved in, you're born into, or you move into, is that what is the agreed upon definitions of what is based in those decisions on what's morally right.
Well,
drug is a very prime and easy example of what that is. Because as soon as weed becomes legal and you go back or you go forward 1 or 2 generations, say marijuana is legal at that point, no longer a drug. Alcohol is like this skirting drug, if you will, like the fact that you're fermenting it and you're getting that alcohol and it's altering and all that stuff.
It's a full-blown drug, but
it is.
It's
I'm
not
saying
considered that way within
my point exactly.
Right. But here's
or
something.
Marijuana is legal, or marijuana will be legal, and marijuana is natural. Much like tobacco is, and we focus a lot on cigars and tobacco on this, and there is some sort of chemical reaction to that, but it's those other things that you're about to include in drugs, and that's where, in my opinion, I'm going to introduce this, and then you guys can go wherever you want, but the irony of it all is that like heroin, meth, you were talking about all that stuff, a lot of that is based off of things that are illegal that lead to that because of the channels and the definitions of what we deem. Because someone put this out, that's legal. But as soon as you go off black market, illegal drug, bad.
Right.
And it does. It leads down bad paths. But a lot of the times, it's led down that path because of the Western medicine, if you will. I'm not gonna like dog on Western medicine, but it's because hey, you have anxiety, let's do this. Hey, you have pain, let's do this. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, you have enough of this. And all of a sudden, it's like you feel this way. All of a sudden now you're looking for your new answer, and all of a sudden you're fucking half dead.
Right. Yeah, and you're on 5 or 10 different pills. No, I get it.
I think that's where it's going. The definition of things is a big part of it.
One thing that you brought up kind of in a roundabout way, and maybe I just heard it within what you were saying, is you mentioned something about somebody, they don't want to take Adderall because they don't have a prescription, they don't want to go on that.
Or they think it's bad.
But here's what that really is. What that really is moral authority. They don't have the moral authority to make that decision. They want somebody else to make it. They want somebody in a white lab coat, whereas prior to that, it would be a priest.
You're saying education or authority?
No,
You're saying authority.
No, I'm saying authority.
Which a lot of times education deems authority.
It does, but what you brought up earlier is you want to try to kind of dance around the edge of just falling into the religion black hole.
No, it's all based on
It's very hard to do that because that idea that the thing that you're talking about is, oh, that's a drug, I can't do it. This is a medicine, I can do it. That's based on an authority of the white lab coat that we have in the Western society now.
Yeah.
That authority was basically taken over from the priesthood, as science gained more prominence within Western society. So whether they're in a fucking frock or whatever priests wear with the white collar,
it's called a white collar,
or the white lab coat, it's that authority that people are looking to of what should I do?
Yeah.
Because people, it's very difficult. There's a lot of factors to involve as far as what is the moral option.
Yeah.
And where somebody could be in a great deal of pain, and a priest is saying weed is bad, you can't do it. Whereas a doctor in California, DC, wherever is saying, smoke some fucking weed. If it makes you feel better, fine. Now they have that moral authority. They don't have any guilt about doing it. They don't feel like they're doing something wrong. And maybe chemically it helps them with what they're doing. It grays the whole moral landscape.
I think if you don't have a camera on you, and then we're in the age now of cameras and everyone's got one in their pocket type thing, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of like behind closed doors that even like, especially in the religion side of it, and even politicians, they're going to go against it. Hey man, if this is going to help you out, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's that hardcore, I always think of like that
The true believer.
that suburban mom, and I'm not saying bad about that, but I picture this from like 80s,
Yeah.
80s TV shows that we grew up on. You know what I mean? It's like the suburban mom that's just like, I don't care if that's gonna make you feel good. That's bad, and then you go like, it's not about a suburban mom. My mom's.
Nah, the just say no thing.
But you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
And all that.
But at the same time, it's like if it was their kid or their mom or their
They don't want
whoever, their.
But if they
a lot of times their morals, and that's how they look at it. Their morals are skewed. But again, what is the moral based off of, other than not necessarily facts, but what they were brought up to believe is right or wrong?
Well, do you guys think that like laws have anything to do with morals?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, so that's what I mean with like the whole like, and we'll get off like the drug thing in a little bit, but like the weed thing, and then like we talked like what the problem is it seems that it's like what deems acceptable or what is deemed acceptable, and between like alcohol or what is the drugs that is considered a drug deemed acceptable.
Get off of drugs. Go to the Christian said on the Facebook Live. It's this is a very basic morality type of a question. What about the morals of treating other people? Honesty, cheating, selfishness, murder, theft, all these things. You know what I mean? Like, where does that become? That's that gray line in my opinion. It's like theft. It's like, all right, shit's hitting the fan. We talked about it as a podcast topic. Shit's hitting the fan. And you're about to, you and your family are about to just die in a corner. Do you steal?
Right.
Where like, I mean, that's that's more of an extreme. Like we can talk about cheating, we can talk about all that stuff, but it's like you're not just feeling. You wake up one morning and you're like, I just don't feel right. Like I'm just not happy. No, like you're at that extreme where it's like your morals are being tested. It's like I was raised and I believe that it's not okay to steal. However, my 4-year-old daughter is about to starve to death.
See, that's such an extreme. That,
I know.
Yeah, steal shit. Steal a fucking melon.
So,
whatever.
there you go.
Feed your daughter.
Ask for forgiveness
Because the moral of...
But what if you go out and kill a squirrel and then you just cook
Fuck
it?
the squirrel. Kill the squirrel.
But
Feed
that's
it to your
what
daughter.
But that's what I mean. Like you don't have to steal to do something like that.
No, I get it. Okay,
like
so...
I'm saying that there's something...
Yeah, but if you grew up in the city or whatever, you're not killing
Well,
squirrels.
it's not hunter-gatherer.
I'm just saying.
These aren't like West Virginia, they know how to kill squirrels type of shit.
I'm saying like
for any of us West Virginia viewers out there.
I have no issue with West Virginia. So I'm just saying.
And if you eat squirrels,
they have squirrels. They have skills that people in New York do.
If you know how to kill crickets without bug spray, let us know too.
Yeah, put that up. Here's something because I think from kind of.
I mean, I should just let you guys go.
No. I think we've gotten ourselves into a hole that the West has gotten itself into. Mainly because we're so. It sounds ridiculous, but we're so dependent on language. Language is important. Language creates the world that you exist within. And Western philosophy
It's pretty deep, right?
has gone very down the hole of linguistic analysis. If you have a word for it, then you can analyze it. If you don't, you can see it in horror movies. In horror movies, when you don't see or know the name of the monster, it's a lot scarier.
Well, it's unknown.
That's what it is, though. It's
Well,
unknown.
language is all agreed upon as well.
Right, it's all agreed upon, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. If there's a monster marching around this garage and we never name it, we will be weaker in confronting it. If we give it a random name like Orange Head, or Clover Blossom, maybe, that'll give us a certain power in addressing.
We might get us.
Nah, we're gonna get hit with copyright.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like you're dancing around that.
Anyway, here's what I'm saying. Is so the specific moral dilemma, like you've outlined, of what if your daughter's starving and you just got fired from your job in an illegitimate way, and the only way to get her some food before she dies of her childhood diabetes, you steal $4 and buy a Snickers bar. It's a ridiculous dilemma.
You can Snicker bar are not $4. First of all, you just steal this.
You can buy a couple. You can take care of her for a few
It's like a
days.
fun family.
Maybe some OJ.
Well, that's good too.
Yeah.
Sugar.
Whatever sugar. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know how diabetes is. Whatever. Sugar. Whatever. Anyway, here's what I'm getting at is you can go down this hole of okay, there's a conflict here of thou shalt not steal versus your daughter's going to starve, therefore steal. And there's no resolution to that at all.
This is the extreme moral dilemma. That's what we're at.
It is. It's an extreme moral dilemma.
Got into that.
But I do have.
Good. I'm glad about
No,
it.
I do have a trajectory for this. So
We have people asking what's in your glass, by the way.
in this,
Just because of the way you're talking.
Clover.
I like listening to Brandon.
I do too. I'm just,
I think
okay.
We're also
very-
hosting this. So,
I'm letting him go. Let him go.
Here's the way out of that moral dilemma that the West has created for itself: is the idea of karma coming from the East. And it's been hijacked by the hippies about if you're nice to people, everything, it'll be fine, blah, blah, blah. That's not what it is. Karma is all about habitual action. And so if you wake up in the day and you're angry about something and you're thinking, yeah, people are just fucking dicks, everybody's an asshole. You're going to see assholes all over the place because that's what you've conditioned yourself to do. And in going through that world that you've created for yourself where everybody's an asshole because you think everybody's an asshole, you're going to project onto them
you have a negative mindset of that.
a negative, angry mindset. They're going to react to you in a negative, angry way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to reinforce that idea that you have that everybody's an asshole. And you can go deeper and deeper down that hole. That's the real idea of karma. Whereas at the same time, if you get up in the morning and you think that, people are dealing with a lot of shit, it's tough, and they're not necessarily projecting at me, maybe they're angry about something else, but I don't necessarily need to let it affect my life or guide my life, then you're going to have a different perspective on things. And that asshole that's driving next to you on the highway, he may flick you off, and you're just like, maybe the guy's wife left him, maybe he's having a bad day, maybe he's having this or that. So I think that perspective on morals of looking for a way in which you don't dig yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole is better than these hard and fast, thou shalt never steal or else you're going to hell.
I think you're a great person, if you do what you just said, Brandon. If there's someone out there that does something bad to you or something that initially you are pissed about or whatever, and then you actually take a second and think about the whole situation and try to look at all the odds and try to almost explain why they did that and try to reason with it. I think reasoning
I agree,
with
100%.
moral explanation is huge. And I don't think that's one thing that we haven't touched on yet, is that when you reason about why something happened or why you did something that pissed somebody off or why they did something to piss you off, I just think no one does enough of that.
It gives you a certain freedom. If you're gonna let's keep with the guy on the highway or whatever. He's pissed. You didn't let him over or whatever. He's flicking you off, cursing your name or whatever. If you take in that energy that he's given, and he's confronted me, I got to confront him. You dig yourself and maybe you're going to see a friend that you haven't seen in 2 years. You're all pissed off, and this guy's like, "Oh, I remember you being fun. Now you're a prick."
No.
You know what I mean? It can kind of domino through your life in that way. But if you take the time, like you're saying, to reason, you look and you say, "There's no way in the world that this guy's mad at me. He doesn't know me. He has no idea who he is. We've interacted for about 20 seconds on a freeway going 60 miles an hour. There's no way he's mad at me. There's something else going on in his life. Maybe you take your foot off the gas and you don't race him. And I've done that. Race people on a freeway and shit. Fuck you, fuck you.
This car, since you have a V6.
No, not this car. This was when I was younger. I haven't done it.
4-cylinder?
When you're merging.
I've overcome my road rage at this point. This is when I was younger. But there's I've lost my thread now. I was thinking about road racing.
Well, is it about the whole, the reasoning? The reasoning
part. The reasoning part is if you react with reason rather than emotion, because people there's mirror neurons, we've evolved to be tribal creatures, where if you're pissed off and you're upset and you had a shit day and you don't want to talk about it, it doesn't fucking matter, because I know. Whether it's your body language, whether it's your fucking pheromones that I don't even know are affecting my brain, whether it's the way your face looks, all that shit translates into I know that something's up with you. So we're very susceptible to being impacted by other people's emotions.
I think that we have not evolved from that, Travis. Like you say
I agree.
that, but
No, I agree. No, we haven't. That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. You said
I'm saying
we've evolved from it.
we're extremely susceptible to that. And we're trying to move to a point of being more reasonable creatures. And if you understand that you're very susceptible to that, you know, like if I walk in the shop and you two just had a fight, you're both pissed, you don't have to say shit to me. I'm going to know it immediately. I'm going to know you're both upset. So the point in that being is that we're very susceptible to being influenced by other people's emotions and states of mind.
Which in return makes us emotional.
Exactly. That's where the reason comes in. If you can take it down a notch and say, all right, this guy's going through something that has nothing to do with me. I don't need to allow those emotions to trigger. I can approach it rationally and reasonably. And maybe he's pissed off, I need to just back away. Maybe I need to engage and ask him what's going on.
Yeah.
There's some reasonable way to handle the situation other than just taking the influential emotions that come on to you from other people.
I think you've introduced a lot of different points there because, you know, when you talk about like the karma side of it, that person could have woken up with that negative preconceived, like the whole day's fucked.
Oh yeah.
It's not even the fact that like, oh, you know, like his wife could have been like, hey, bye honey.
Yeah.
Love you, here's your pancakes, here's like blah blah blah.
Nothing to do with
nothing wrong, and it could be a chemical imbalance. We haven't like really talked about that too, you know, maybe we've talked about like Western medicine, but it's like you could have a chemical imbalance that you are literally just irritable because of your genetic makeup or what's going on in your fucking
maybe
diet.
Your blood sugar's low, maybe you didn't get those pancakes.
So that person may not be mad at you, but they are actually in their mind mad at you.
And 99% of the time they're not mad because of you. They're mad at you.
So what I'm saying is that it's, you know, you've introduced a lot of those, like they're circling around each other. You know, you have the karma side of it, right? You were talking about where you actually wake up and you actually have that's how you start your day negatively or positively, but negatively in your example. And so it's not necessarily there is another issue, but there are times that there are other issues that they are projecting now on you.
I think it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
It is.
It can be, yeah. What I'm saying is that
can.
what I think, and what I'm getting from it, trying to bring it back to the whole moral dilemma side of it, and we haven't really talked about it a whole lot, and I think there's a lot
of moral dilemma, though?
It can be. What I'm saying is that the golden rule type thing is you treat others like you want to be treated. So it's like, and I know Brandon for a long time, and I know you, Jake, for a long time now, and I know Dustin, who's here as well. You know, it's like we all try to do that, but we do get lost in that sometimes. But I don't think it's necessarily a moral thing that if you know something's wrong and all that stuff. I guess my point is that based on everything that Brandon just said, if it's just you, and we are talking about the moral dilemma, stick to where you're at least with your morals and your self-confidence and what you want to project out into the world, as hippie as that might sound. But it's one of those things that you want to, no matter what people are throwing at you, that scenario on the highway or whatever, it's like, fucking hit the brakes, like let them go. Yeah. I've had people like do that stuff. I've had people like, I'm driving through Easton, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going like 17 miles an hour by the Starbucks and I see some dude and like, you know, he's absolutely like, completely yuppie, and he's just like, whoa, and I'm like, I look, because I have it in my fucking windshield on my car, and I'm like, I'm going 17 miles an hour. Sorry you have 2 lattes in your hand, and you about stepped out in front of me. Like, that's not on me. There's no fucking crosswalk here.
Well,
but and you know what? I did carry that for about 5 minutes on my way home, and I'm like, that motherfucker, I should have stopped and fucking said something, like, hey, look here, I'm sorry I, you almost spelled lattes on your fucking J. Crew neck. Like, I can get angry too. But at the same time, I'm like, no, it's probably best I didn't because that wouldn't have ended well. And that's where it's like, there are times where you actually, because again, like that day I was coming from the gym, so I was still amped up and I was like, like adrenaline's pumping and all that stuff. I still had caffeine and all that stuff. So again, there's chemicals in there, I'm like going at it. But when it all said and done, it took me, I'm not kidding, it took me about an hour to get over it.
Oh, I bet. You know me, I get fired up.
No.
But do you guys mind if we shift gears? I think Christian.
Let's take some internet.
Well, Christian Summer had a really good point.
He did.
About
Stephen Cook had a question
about
too.
morals, like living in different areas, like different cultures and stuff like that. Like I think, especially with, American culture and all the cultures that kind of have, migrated to this land and stuff like that. Definitely, we all get under each other's skin.
You can go from city to city. You can go from
Yeah.
state to state. You can go
Yeah.
from country to country.
But talk about a major culture shift between, I don't know. The example in my head was, I was thinking of when I was in high school. We went out west to Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
And as most people know, if you've ever gone to a big national park, odds are all the tourists that are there, there's a probably good chance that 70 to 75% of the tourists there are Asian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think, at least from what I've observed, and there is I hope no one takes offense to it, but within our culture, I think that the Asian culture is perceived as rude.
Mm-hmm.
And very pushy, very direct in their ways of doing things.
They are direct.
And
Yeah.
and it's
Depending on what country, when you talk about Asia, obviously that's huge. But yeah, I mean, it's
kind of one of those things when you talk about morals, you have a way of thinking that you think is right?
Yeah.
And then we talk about, well, you should treat others the way you want to be treated, right? But if they do something that they deem morally correct, that's a different culture, and that they're used to this culture, they're used to these morals, and they do something that you deem as wrong, then is it really wrong?
I think the farther away you go, and Brandon, you might be able to chime in based on your I'm going to refer to it as self-education, like you were referring to, right? I mean, you're very well read. But I think when you introduce the geographical differences of people, you're introducing a lot. You're introducing the culture and society of where they're at and what they're at now in this day and age. So 2018, how they interact on their daily basis. If they are either first gen over here or they're actually just tourists or whatever it is, there are different sides of it. Even though a lot of us in America, a lot of countries, if you tour over there, you're going to be accepted in a lot of ways, mostly because you have, you're American tourists, you have money. Yeah, exactly. So Brandon, for those of you on the podcast listening, he did the money sign. That's exactly where I was going. So they want the money, so they put up with bullshit like a lot of people do, right? I mean, that's just how this world works. Money
Customer's always right.
Money is
kind
a
of
universal
thing.
language type thing, just like math is, right? I mean, it's one of those things where my point is that geographically then introduces society today, introduces culture behind that, and again, I hate going into it. It introduces what you were saying, Brandon, with the religion side of it. You bring in, most Asian cultures are not, even today, even though a big part of the Christian side of it, where we were brought up on in this garage and in America mainly, as far as the generations growing up with the Puritans and then growing forward with the evangelical side of it, of trying to get that out to the rest of the world, witness.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they had to accept it. So you have a lot of these cultures that are coming over that are based on religions that are not the same. So you introduce multiple factors into a person walking into where you were at.
Yeah. Well, it's the same
I just wanted to preface that because I think there's a lot more to it as opposed to just they're from this country and they just act.
Well, one thing.
But I think that's self-explanatory within all. I'm glad.
I don't think a lot of people think like that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're
on
right.
the line of the Asians that you were talking about though, and the cultural differences that you're talking about. I moved out to California years ago, spent time with an Asian family there, and I was there maybe a week to 2 weeks, and I was having dinner with my boss. My boss was Laotian, and I'd have dinner with them. I'd help them cook dinner, and I was accepted into the family. And my brother knew them prior to me knowing them. I was introduced to them by my brother. And so we had maybe 2 weeks going. If I was out in California and just, basically learn. I mean, I was drunk for about 9 months straight prior to that. Worked at a bar. I woke up at 3 and went to sleep about 7 a.m.
Come to the lodge.
Yeah, and then I went
It
to.
was a different brand.
Yeah, I went to California, and now I'm getting.
Yeah, it was a different brand.
Now I'm getting up at 5 a.m. and I'm working 12 hours a day. I'm going home. I'm helping do dinner and stuff into the family type of thing. My brother had known them prior to me, and so Yali, the wife of my boss, she kept asking me, "Hey, when's your brother coming out?" He was in Texas in the Air Force at the time, and he was stupid with his money. He didn't have any. He was buying motorcycles and Jeeps and everything. And I tell her day after day. And it was like, yeah, he didn't have any money. He can't come out. She thought I was bullshit. And so eventually, and I wasn't upset about it, but like just out of habit and cultural indoctrination, I guess, I looked her straight in the eyes. I was like, Yali, he doesn't have any money. He literally cannot afford to fly here. Everybody in the kitchen shut down. There's 2 daughters, the husband, the wife, and me. Everybody shut down and just went to their work and was doing their thing. And I'm just kind of like, fuck, doing
awkward as fuck.
We cooked dinner, we ate dinner, nobody talked, nobody said a fucking word.
Yeah.
And so I went to my boss's office the next day. I was like,
Person's awesome. I met him.
He's amazing.
Big Rob and
Yeah.
I visited him out. So
amazing. So I go
amazing family. I'll vouch for that.
I go to his office. I'm like, Prasan, like, the fuck happened? He's like, I don't know. Maybe you should go home.
They thought you were poor, or what? What was he?
No, they thought no. Here, well, I'll finish.
Explain.
I'll finish the story, and then that'll explain things. So I had no idea what happened. So I go to.
You didn't ask him?
No, I asked Prasan.
He's asking Prasan, who's the patriarch, his father.
I was out there for 2 weeks.
So what Prasan said?
I had no idea what was going on, and so I go to Prasan the next day. I'm like, dude, what happened? And he's like, I don't know, maybe you should go home. And I was just like,
that's how he said?
No, that's not what he said. That's how he opened it. And he's just he's very direct like that. He's Asian. He just says that's what he's thinking. When I went back there about 3 years after I had left California, I go back. The first thing the Asians that I worked with said was, "Hey, you got fat." I did. No, they were right. No, they were correct. But Americans wouldn't say that. But they're just direct like that. So anyway, I talked to Prasan. I'm like, what the fuck happened? I need to go home. I'm like, I don't want to go home. Like, can you tell me what happened? What happened was, in their culture, you don't look people right in the eyes, because if you look them in the eyes, it means you want to fight. It means it's fucking, you got
a problem. Like turning a knife at a kitchen table.
It's like, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but if you go to the zoo and there's a fucking silverback there, you happen to be in a cage or whatever, don't stare that motherfucker in the eyes, because that's telling him something.
Yeah.
That's communicating to him that you're challenging him.
Yeah.
And so you don't look straight in the eyes. You also don't raise your voice. I didn't feel like I raised my voice. I think I do talk loudly sometimes. Maybe another senses deficit I have. Maybe I don't hear so well and I talk louder.
I think you just don't care, but go on.
Maybe I don't care.
I think Americans just do that when people aren't understanding what they're trying to say.
That's the point.
That's us trying to be direct.
That's our culture.
What we're doing right now, we're getting louder.
So what came to
talk over each other?
Yeah, what came
not
to
you guys, but I'm saying
we're trying to be direct.
Don't judge me.
If I would have judged you, we would not be friends to this day.
Probably true. And so anyway, what came to light was I had utterly disrespected her in her home. It didn't make sense to me, but I listened to Prasan. He explained to me, and so
I get it.
He invited me. He's like, "I'll give you a chance to make up. I'll bring." He said, "Give it a few days." So I didn't have dinner with him for like a week or so. And I was just out there. I do my thing, go home, whatever. And then finally they invite me back for dinner. And I go back, we cook, we eat dinner, we clean, and nobody says a fucking word. And then as soon as the cleaning's done, Yali fucking leaves.
So you insulted her by...
Oh, absolutely.
She invited him to the home, you rejected it.
No, I didn't reject it.
Not like, because you're saying, no, it's almost, were you making up excuses?
No, none of that.
Right, why is this insult there?
This is her. No, the insult is I looked her right in the eyes and I said loudly, he does not have the money.
Spoke,
and that's it.
Okay.
That was it, and that's why maybe there's some confusion here. Is that there wasn't an insult from our perspective.
Right.
I did what I was taught to do since I was a child. Is if you're telling somebody the truth, you look them in the eyes so they can see your face, they can see your eyes, and you speak clearly enough for them to hear you.
Because that's genuine.
That's genuine, and they can read you, and they can tell if you're full of shit or not.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing, what I've been taught since I was a child.
I think most of us have.
Right. In our culture.
Right.
In their culture, I fucked up. And so after I was invited back for dinner a week after this offense, and we have a silent cooking, a silent eating, and a silent cleanup, and then she fucking leaves. And I was just like, fuck. And I looked at Prasan, and he's just kind of like, he's just like, this is your only shot. You got to go talk to her. And so I went out and I talked to her, and I explained to her. I explained just what I said. You know, in my culture, like since I was a little kid, I've been taught, if you're being honest and you're telling somebody the truth, you look them in the eyes, you speak clearly enough for them to hear you, and that way they know, they can read you and they can tell if you're telling the truth or not. And I was like, that's all I was doing. I had no intention to offend her or anything. And so she's thought on it for a minute, and you know, we made up, and she understood it. She was like, all right, I get what you were getting at. You know, in my culture, it's offensive to look at an elder in the eyes, to speak as if you're, you know, being loud or yelling at them. And so it was just this complete disconnection of cultures where she really didn't do anything wrong. Because, I mean, she was, I think, in her 40s at the time. Her whole life, this is how you behave.
Yeah.
I behaved outside of that, but my whole life, that's how you behave. And it was something that would have, that if I hadn't rectified it, could have destroyed the whole relationship.
Yeah.
Because there's that misunderstanding between cultures. Neither one, like, she wouldn't necessarily have been immoral for shunning me for behaving that way, because that's how she's always been brought up.
Right.
You know, and I wouldn't necessarily be immoral for saying, you know, well, fuck, this is ridiculous. I'm not apologizing.
So that is completely, you know, we've been through this whole story, and that, do you think that is completely off, like, a moral spectrum because of the difference in the culture? I
think that it at the very least, it illustrates that not everything is moral. Things that can be extremely destructive to relationships or lives in general are not necessarily moral. So maybe it gets at the definition of morals itself.
You don't think that morals actually like define from the basis?
What do you mean?
Like from the core, like everything that goes into that culture that you're talking about, the differences in the culture. And I'm listening the whole time, and I'm listening to that. Brandon has that tendency because of the way he is, and he actually took it for truth. In the American culture, you look people in the eye, unless you're doing business deals, you're actually like in a certain scenario. If you talk to them in the eye, like I'm talking to Jake right now, in his left eye, because that's the eye that's supposed to be more tied to the right brain, that's going to be actually more to the emotional side as opposed to a confidential side.
Didn't know that shit.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of it.
Trickery.
It's not trickery. It's actually yeah. But no, I mean that's my whole point. Is that Brandon and I can talk to each other, look people in the eye. But even in the American culture, you do that too long, you make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That happens. So I mean, that's I think human nature. You go back to like the whole like silverback gorilla. That's evolution. You do that at some point. It comes across. So for those listening, I'll tell you this. There's a tip. When you're talking to someone, I've looked both these guys in the eye, and I've trained myself that it's very hard not to. I'm looking Brandon in his right eye, my left. Jake the same way. I always do that because I learned that in sales. Because that is science, because that's tied into that side of the brain that is tied into emotion, as opposed to that conflict or literal type of thought.
Let's pause for a second and give our listeners the direct advice on being a correct businessman, Steve. Say that again, step by step. What do you do?
Lift people in the left eye.
No, the left eye.
When you're making eye contact, no, I mean, I'm not trying to make a point.
I want to know this though.
That's legitimate. You look people in your left,
you know the
right
hemisphere.
eye.
The hemisphere.
Yeah, it's all based on the hemispheres.
I do now.
Okay. No, well, but you may know. I don't remember. Right is more emotions. Left is more analytical, or vice versa.
I look at
left
you
is
right.
imaginary.
I look you and your right eye, and anyone out there
Okay,
can correct me.
What he's saying though is the left side of your brain is, because it crosses.
Right.
You know, it's tied to your left or your right
We're
eye.
way off of morals, by the way.
So if he's looking, I don't think we are though, because this is something that's.
Well, the reason I do it is because it makes more sense. I'm not trying I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to do that.
You are though.
I'm not. No.
If you're in sales, you are trying to win. You're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And you're trying to appeal to their emotions rather than their intellect.
But so to that point, I'm trying
is that immoral?
Listen, I'm trying to win as opposed to lose by looking at that gorilla by your example if I look in their, and I don't know how it works, if I look to my left, their right eye, will they respond similarly as opposed to if I look to the left eye of them and the right, because that's how the brain works based on evolution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I've grown a tendency to, and it's hard to turn off when you get into it, when you actually train yourself to do that in sales, that I don't look at the, like I'm doing this to Brandon right now, and
I'm gonna stare at your left eye.
You don't really. Yeah, you pissed me off.
Switcheroo.
No. It's one of those things that I don't. It's a matter of, it's not an advantage at that point, especially now. Like I do it because I've learned that's how people react better because of my intentions. I'm not trying to sell anyone in this garage on anything, especially talking to you guys. I can't look at the left side of someone in the camera. I can look at and it's funny I say that.
There's two there. Yeah.
I literally looked at the left camera. But no, it's just a tendency that you do because that's you're talking. And I looked at it as, when I learned that in sales, I looked at it as you're talking to that person as a person. You're not automatically. So when I switch over to Brandon's right eye, I'm not pushing something. I'm not trying to. That's where I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win over your intellect as opposed to who you are. But you're absolutely right, Brandon. I mean, that's.
You think priests do the same thing?
What's that?
You think priests do the same thing?
Absolutely. I think this was learned at some point, way beyond the level of science we have now. That you actually, and there are people, absolutely, salespeople absolutely do that. It's, as you're trying to sell, you're trying to get. You talk about priests. You're trying to get. You go back to. Way back to the conversation when I compared you, not compared you to, but made it a similar thing when you were raised Lutheran and you said this is bullshit. That was whole Martin Luther's thing about becoming Lutheran and starting the Protestant side of things, where it's like he was looking at it and like people were trying to, priests and Catholics were trying to preach to people's emotions as opposed to logic.
To their credit, they didn't have a whole lot of.
Well, it got to the level also is that no one spoke fucking Latin.
Right.
And so it's like you're doing every sermon in Latin.
Also,
it's like,
most
all right,
people
so by the way,
are-
that meant this.
And let's talk about something different about how,
dive
like, we got this conversation actually going on our live, with
I tried to get
Alex.
Stephen Cook on our video, but I think it would come on that.
Yeah. We have this conversation going on about, like, Nate said something along the lines, like, with the choices in life, if you have a drastic situation that you feel the need to do and you've exhausted all, righteous or, ways to correct that situation, do you then break your, like, moral compass and break rules to protect your own?
All right, say that one more time for everyone.
Or
If
give
you
it-
say
or-
Nate,
or
'cause
give
there's
it
a
a
lot
concrete
going on.
example.
And Steven, I'm
So-
sorry I can't read your whole comment. There's also comments going on that on the iPad, the iPhone, which a lot of people use, you can't read the whole comment. It says see more.
Mine's working for some reason. I don't
That's
know
good.
why.
But so Nate's talking about, like, in life, if your loved ones versus, like, that of a child, like your family, there's an issue that needs to be resolved, much like we were talking about, like if you had a daughter that
So
needed
extremes,
something
yeah.
to eat, like an extreme, like, do you think that you break that moral compass after, like, all legal or, your moral options have been exhausted to help said child?
We
or
talking
loved
about
one?
kidnapping a kid?
No, we're not talking about that.
No,
by the way.
just
So
like
I
talking
think that
about
I'll
that.
say this before you clarify. I think that survivalistic mindset, and I say it because that's the common thing. 9 times out of 10 will absolutely win over moral compass.
Yeah.
Survivalism will 9 times out of 10. We don't know that in today's society because of this, but when it comes down to it, you look at all those the stories back in those times. You look at the stories even like during Civil War, during other wars. You look at it in the hypothetical apocalyptic type stories and scenarios. If you don't go survival, then your moral compass, you'll be the first to die.
Right.
You'll be the first to die. So
Yeah,
so
I
I
agree with
think I like what Brandon likes to say a lot of times, like the monkey brain thing, where it's.
That's what I'm trying to bring it back to, Jake.
No, but I think a lot of times that morals will lose out to survivalism 9 times out of 10 in the extreme. When it's not the extreme, I don't think people allow that to creep in. It will start to, but they'll stifle that based on their morals and what they think is socially acceptable. And I use that term absolutely a lot of times because I think socially acceptable is based on what you consider your morals to be.
Yeah.
So when you're in a moral dilemma, it's socially acceptable, but that's when I also will bring up, and I'm not trying to dance all over the page, but when I saw it earlier, like, you're like cheating and stuff like that, it's like socially acceptable, it's not okay to cheat.
No.
How many people fucking cheat?
Yeah.
And then go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's all over the page.
Well, like my dad gave an example about like if someone comes to the house and asks for food, he would give them what they needed within reason.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not really like a moral dilemma, but if someone
Here's-
comes to your house at night, say it's midnight, like actually we had an
Cock
example.
your gun, you don't want to answer the door.
Well, that's
Here's
what we did.
To turn that into.
But then they
moral-
said that they needed gas for their car, but we didn't see any car.
Right. Well, here's the other thing: is
That's tough. That's a tough situation.
the guy shows up to your house and he's got a story. He needs some dinner. The moral thing to do is to feed him. Give him a meal. Wish him the best. Help him along his way. What happens when he comes the 6th time?
Yeah.
That's the
he's
moral
like
dilemma.
He's like a cat.
That's the
Yeah.
moral dilemma. Are you helping or hurting that individual now by facilitating their helplessness?
Yeah.
Now the comments, because I can actually
Dustin's chiming in. I'm sorry.
more.
I'm chiming in because if you can't hear him on the microphone,
You're
Dustin's
when-
chiming in.
When I hit see more, it actually gives me the whole comment, so I've been reading through a lot of them.
Yeah.
The thing with Steven was he actually served in the military.
Okay.
His dilemma that he brought up, and actually was brought up in his MBA courses, I think his instructor brought it up or someone, was the decision to either take the shot or not on a child who was a threat to himself and or the rest of his troops. So that was the question that was brought up, and that's kind of the conversation that they've been having via comments throughout the whole thing of that moral dilemma. So Stephen brought up, I don't know exactly how far back it was, but just the question for the table was to simply, in his position, he wanted to hear your guys' thoughts and positions on if you were presented with that particular moral dilemma, do you take care of that, protect yourself, or are you going to take that shot to take the life of a child?
Okay.
The conversations progressed as far as what Nate had commented as well.
Thanks, Dustin. For me, I mean, I'll start.
By the way, we're working on like the fact that we can actually get I've got a microphone that we need to figure that part out. And we'll work on that in the meantime, so that if this scenario does come up again, that you guys can hear him.
Some of our road mapping.
Yeah, no, we're growing. Yeah, absolutely.
If I may start on this, I mean, I've never been in a situation like that, but it's easier said than done, obviously.
Yeah.
But if I were in a situation like that, I would protect my own, but would it eat at me? Yes. It's not whether, yes, I would probably hesitate, but at the end of the day, I'm protecting my own. You don't know whether you're, if you're overseas, if that kid's got a bomb, you don't know, which they have done in Afghanistan and stuff like that, which is horrible.
Well, they did it back to Vietnam.
Yeah,
It's
so-
probably
They've done that
all
for
for a
centuries,
time.
right?
But it's
Yeah,
I think in that situation, and again, I'm not, I've never been in the Army or part of any group like that to have a situation like that. But if I were in that situation, my mindset right now would be that I would take the shot.
Yeah.
I would definitely be kind of torn after the fact. But in an instance like that, it's like what our police are dealing with in the streets in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of questions about that too.
So, I'm sorry, Brandon. Ray threw in there, I prefer to discuss Brandon's topic of feeding the stranger. So let me introduce this part of it, is that, so take that out of it. You got a man at your front door asking for food, asking for gas, whatever it might be. Change that to a child. So my issue is that I think with your moral compass and all that stuff is that first and foremost, you have your moral compass, whether it be feeding the stranger that came to your door, or you're walking down the street or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Depending on where you're at, but it's like if there's a homeless population, whether they're kids, they're adults, they're women or men, I think the morals will actually frame that to a point, because you talk about warfare and all that stuff, is that historically it was the men that were in the warfare, right? They were the ones that were active in there, and so like you bomb a village, it's like, oh, there are women and children there. Well, when it comes down again to that survivalist side of it, it's not that cut and dry. So I think that's where you actually, morally, I'm not saying that whether you're feeding someone or you're taking that shot, Steven, out there, and this is maybe some bold statements, but it's what's your greater good? What is the moral compass, if that's the case? But also look after yourself. I think that's also a survivalistic style of thinking, where it's if you don't take that shot, if you don't feed that child, if you don't like open that door, what's your greater good there? And I think that's the decision, no matter what the situation is. It's absolutely, if you're gone,
Yeah.
are you able to provide for your family? Are you able to provide for yourself? And what is the greater value? It sounds great to put yourself last. It sounds great to be selfless, but at the same time, you're selfless for that person that may take advantage of you, or you can be selfless for, in a sense, and in also a survival standpoint, where it's like, I got to take care of myself first, so that I can take care of people that I care about, and then I can take care of that. I comment a lot on social media about like building yourself up strong so you can be strong for others. Mm-hmm. And I think if you don't do that first, and I'm not maybe necessarily diving into directly to Steven's thing or Ray's thing about the stranger that needs food, but the biggest thing is that you can't provide food for that stranger if you haven't provided food for yourself first. Or else you'd be in that same situation. So take that mentality. I'm of the opinion that you take that mentality to every situation. You can't provide for anyone else if you can't provide for yourself first.
Yeah.
And you can't in that situation. I've never been in that. That's a very, very heavy topic that Stephen brought up about taking a shot on a child, because all of a sudden your moral compass is spinning. I mean, that's a metaphor, but it's also you think of that like you know, it's like, you know, due north, and it's like that compass is spinning. You have no idea where you're at that point,
Right.
because you are questioning other sides of your moral compass. So my whole thing is, and someone says self-preservation, to a point, you preserve yourself so that you can be there for other people. You're gone, you can't provide for anyone else,
Right.
including people you care about or yourself. So then it's like you're off the map. So if you let yourself, it's a constant struggle where you're actually doing that for other people, but at the same time, if you're not there, so you talk about a sniper, you're taking a shot on a child. If you don't do that, and then you're the one that's next, well, you can't save the next 18 people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you didn't do that.
Well, it's like Matt just said. He said, like, is your moral conscience basically strong enough to sacrifice yourself for someone else?
I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that it's you first all the time. I'm saying, again, going back to the statement of build yourself up strong so you can be strong for others.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if there are people that you care about. That's, I think, first and foremost, because that's how it works. Because I don't know how many billion people are in the world. I don't know most of them. 7 billion people. So that 7 billionth person that just got born, if I sacrifice myself for that, is that the greater good? I don't know. But if I can do it, be here for the people that I care about, and actually rely on me for either, whether it be food, whether it be money, whether it be just being there.
I think there's something that connects was it Steven talking about the sniper shot?
Yeah, Steven Cook. He was in the military. Yeah,
I think
that's a
great
struggle.
question.
That's heavy as
but
shit.
There's an interesting question, topic, whatever, that connects what Ray and Steven both said, because the same thing is happening in both scenarios, and that is exploiting another's morals to gain yourself.
That's absolutely.
In the sense of the guy coming to your house, maybe one time he's truly hungry. The 6th time, he's taking advantage of you. most likely, maybe he's mentally handicapped, he doesn't know better, whatever.
A lot of
But
other open factors.
There's a lot of factors involved, but the exploitative thing still holds true. The thing with the kid, that kid didn't decide to do what he's doing and come in within range of a sniper to the point that a sniper thinks he's a threat. The kid was told by somebody else that's exploiting the innate moral sense that you don't harm children. So in both cases, morals, the moral sense is being exploited. And I think that that's something that you have to take into account when considering how to apply your morals, is at what point can they be exploited? If your morals say, help other people, but some guy realizes that and says, if I just keep asking this guy for $5, he's going to give it to me $5 every day. So I think that's a whole other factor in the morals.
It's like these damn girls with these Girl Scout cookies. You know,
keep selling you cookies.
Yeah.
They're giving you
they
a
just come up
product.
to your door
But
and
they're
they
giving
think
you
that
a
because
product.
they're like
That's an
cute
honest
little
exchange.
kids that they can sell you shit.
Yeah, but they're giving you delicious cookies. That's an honest
True.
exchange.
That's true.
Well,
Exploiting morals is not an honest exchange.
Maybe I don't
no,
want
it's
cookies.
not.
Maybe I'm
It
already
is
fat.
exploiting it for a fact because Thin Mints promote diabetes.
That's true.
So they're fucking you.
Yeah.
No,
Well, but the Girl Scouts are gone, right?
All right.
Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts were merged into
Scouts. Yeah.
So there's going to be all kinds of teen pregnancy and all kinds of shit. Out in the campgrounds and the tents and shit.
Cats and dogs living together.
How are they going to police
There's
that?
No, my
You can't have kids in the woods in
hang
the
on.
tents. They can't police all
My
that.
whole thing is like you always have to dial up, and that's my whole thing. It's like those kids. Same reason you can't just wipe out necessarily, unless it's absolutely. If your moral compass and your ethics and everything else, sound mind, even if it's not completely sound mind, you need to wipe out an entire population. That is extreme, absolutely 100% extreme, and usually not okay. A child that's in a war zone, again, depending on the age, depending on you don't know because they were born in that culture.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like that's to Steven's point. We're not going to answer that.
No.
Like
There's no right answer.
Yeah, exactly.
There's-
We can talk about it.
Yeah.
We're not going to answer the right.
The
or
military
wrong.
answer
And we
is
can
take the
fucking-
shot.
Yeah, take the
The
shot.
moral answer
You're
is
there to preserve
fuck
the
knows?
warfare
I don't think
there.
it's a moral answer. I just gave my answer.
No, I agree with your answer. The answer is take the shot.
What's yours?
To get into
Mine
morals,
is to
though,
take the shot, but am I
was it
gonna?
moral to do so? There's too many factors.
Yeah, that's why. Like I would take the shot, but like that's self-preservation. to me.
What's the alternative in that?
Yeah, the
regard?
alternative is your
And
your
I'm
squad
gonna say this
dies,
because
you die, whatever.
I'll say this because this is hypothetical because none of us have been in the military. We're not able to answer that because we have not been in that situation.
I don't think a military person can
We
answer
can.
that.
I know. We have a military person asking that question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like my whole thing is before people. I don't want. I mean, I don't care, but I don't want people to get offended by what we're saying. But at the same time, it's absolutely. This is a very very heavy question.
I don't know why you get offended by that. I really don't.
People get offended by all
Some
sorts of
people
stuff,
do.
which is fine. That's
And then
part of the
seriously, I don't
podcast.
care.
Yeah.
Because
I understand that. I'm saying that it's. My big thing is what is the alternative? It's not about not sleeping well. It's that I agree
You
with,
saved the lives of 5 guys in your
agree with your
squad,
point
or
that that child could have been innocent, and you have to live with that whole thing. And I've never been put in that situation, but at the same time, my mind thinks, what's the alternative? Does he have a bomb? Does he have a gun? I saved that person, but then all of a sudden I'm looking at this child, and all of a sudden over here, someone over here is also a sniper that takes me out, and then all of a sudden it's all fucked.
well, it's like that situation in American Sniper. Literally, what we're talking about is he shoots the guy, a grown man, and then what seems to be his boy, his
Go
son,
for the RPG.
Well, goes for the
someone brought up
RPG.
American Sniper.
and goes for the
I think it was
RPG,
Nate.
and then he's like, "Don't pick it up, don't
Yeah.
pick it up, don't pick it up." He picks it up, and he's got to shoot it.
Yeah.
That's the same thing about feeding that person that knocks on your door.
Well,
Right?
here's the thing.
So no, let me say this. So there's two examples, right? There's that part where it's like someone knocks on your door and all that stuff. Well, you feed that person, it's an honest thing, right? So it's all of a sudden, it's not even, you don't even introduce that because, you were introducing the fact that they come back several times. All right, that one time they do it, how many times? It's stopping for a stranger on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Same thing. So your dad opens the door. Yeah, he's got his gun and all that stuff cocked and loaded, ready to go. in case something happens. This person, Brandon's standing at the front door, and he's fine. He says, "Thank you so much." Well, all of a sudden, the back door, his accomplice is back there breaking in the house and then shoots your dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily a moral thing. It's that survival thing where it's like sometimes you see someone stranded on the side of the road. I've stopped for someone before, and I know because there are bad situations out there, you don't do that. Same thing as you're walking down the street and there's a homeless person and says, "Hey, do you have any quarters? Do you have $1 or whatever?" You reach for your pocket. Well, I mean, I remember the first time I was in Chicago as a visitor in high school. We went downtown. We were staying with my aunt and uncle downtown in Chicago, and it was one of those things where it's like, hey, there's these homeless newspapers.
Yeah.
There's people on the sides of the corners of the street, you know, saying, "Hey, do you want to like buy a homeless newspaper? It goes to this, this, and that." Well, it's not even the fact that that dollar or those $5, whatever you're donating, doesn't go to the charity. It's the fact that that person sees that you pull your wallet out of your back pocket, your front pocket, whatever it is. You walk down 3 blocks and there's one other person there, and then you just takes it.
How'd they obtain the newspapers? They steal them?
No, that's all part of the scam.
They're printing newspapers?
Or there's an honest side of it, but there are people in that organization that are homeless that are like, yeah, well, we can have this side business. It's the same shit we were talking about with prohibition and everything.
I did want to talk about like honesty, if we could, before we like start like our closing remarks.
Yeah,
what do you guys think about like being honest? Like, whether is honesty just never questioned, like ever, like
Always.
at a time where you have a situation, you have a moral dilemma of should you be honest or should you not be honest? Is it always be honest?
No, it never is. Always be honest.
Never 100%. I agree with that.
Okay.
But here's what I think here's what I think matters is when you're going to get into the realm of lying, it's about the ripple effect of the lie. Now, if you're going to tell somebody, like your girlfriend or whatever, you know, do I look pretty? And maybe not. You say yes. You always say yes. That's a short-term ripple, because tomorrow she's going to ask again. You know what I mean? You've not pissed her off.
What if she doesn't look pretty?
Then you still say yes.
I'm just kidding.
But I love you.
You know what I'm saying?
You're not pretty, but I love you.
No, that's not going to work. But it's a short-time ripple effect. Now, if somebody says, "Hey, do I have a problem with drinking?" Or maybe your girlfriend's not pretty, she's overweight, and she's gained 40 pounds in a year. Do you have an honest conversation because she's 25 and heading towards diabetes and an early death?
Yes.
That's a huge ripple effect.
All right, take it back a level.
That's what I'm saying.
Middle ground.
It's the duration,
Middle
the
ground.
duration of the effect of the lie. If it's a short duration,
What's middle ground?
Middle ground is, do I look pretty? No. Second day, do I look pretty? No. And then third day, I'm talking just for simple timeline there. The whole time you're like, no, but I'm like, you do.
wait, you're saying no?
I'm sorry. No,
There's different girls asking you then because she's leaving you.
No,
If
I'm
you keep saying
no, what I'm saying, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Do I look pretty? Yes, but you're thinking no. Second day.
And she
second week.
descends into madness.
Yeah, no, just, you keep saying yes, like you're saying, like lie. But in your mind, you're like, yeah, you don't look pretty.
That depends. Are you lying to yourself too, or just?
No, you know that, but you're telling that white lie.
Well, those are two different lies.
I agree. But
Lying
you
to
say
her?
that if you think she
No,
still
lying to
looks
her is
pretty.
irrelevant as far as lying to yourself.
No, I'm not saying lying to yourself. I'm saying if you're lying to her, like, do I look pretty? And you think no, but you're saying yes. Do you actually think that? No, you're saying no, but I'm trying to I want to boost your mentality. I want to boost your ego. And that leads down to the fact that it's like by the time that goes 5 days, 5 weeks, and then you leave that person.
5 weeks, no big deal. That's what I think. It's about lying to yourself. Like if you're not addressing the fact that you're lying, like if you lie to her, fine. You say, you look pretty, you look fine, whatever, for a couple weeks, and the whole time you're addressing it with yourself that you don't believe what you're saying, and then you address that. That's fine. People go through that. There's going to be that border period of
I get what you're saying.
of understanding your own mind.
Depending on what it is, I think lying is acceptable if it's seriously I'm not going to give an example, but seriously protecting loved ones.
No.
To what extent?
I'm not going to give an example.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll give an example based on that. Does this dress make me look fat? Yeah, it's
Your
not.
face does.
No. My point is that it's not about the fact that you are being you're lying to yourself by saying that, and it's that you know what you think, but you're lying. It's the greater good is where I'm at.
The greater good of what? Telling her she looks fat in that dress?
No, I'm saying that it's am I fatter than I used to be? No, you're not. But the scale's saying differently, and you think that, but you still love her, so you're not gonna nothing's gonna change on your side of it, right?
So you're not going to leave her because you're not attracted
Correct.
to her.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. But if you are, and you're just lying and leading that person on or leading that person on, take that out of the relationship.
Well, you're not leaving her on.
It's
It's
part
part
of
to
that.
stay with her.
It's like an employee that you're saying am I not doing well? And you're like, oh yeah, you're doing fine, and all of a sudden you fire them.
Fired.
Yeah, that's not okay.
That's not okay.
You make a mistake, and it's
that's not
hey,
okay.
yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, maybe the girlfriend is not a good example because that's difficult. Hey,
I think it's good. I mean, it's more.
Do my shoes.
Like if
make
you have
me
a
look
son,
fat.
if you have a kid and you have money issues,
Yeah.
and you think that you can get out of it, but you're basically not foreclosing your house, but you're going to file for bankruptcy, right? Do you tell your kid that you're filing?
How old's the kid?
Why does that matter?
If he's 4, it's a lot different than 17.
That's true.
If it's 4, he didn't know what money is.
Give me both examples. What if you're 9?
If he's 9, I don't know, is he a dunce or is he really smart and he can understand what's going on? I think here's the thing that I haven't brought up. I think it fits in somewhere though. Is morals have a lot to do with capacity, both of the other party and the person who the morals apply to. If you have the this will be somewhat random, but the sniper example.
Cool.
If a sniper has a moral duty to protect his platoon or squad or whoever by taking out the enemy, but he's farsighted and blind in one eye, and he's got a twitch in his finger.
He should be a sniper.
He should not be a
Right.
sniper.
He does not have the capacity to fulfill that duty. So to place moral blame on him is not necessarily making any sense. For a child, and that was another thing that I thought was interesting in both the beggar at the door for dinner and the child sniper scenario, is the capacity of the actor. Now, if you have somebody that's mentally handicapped, has an IQ of 50, and at best can sign the first letter of his name.
I like you did this.
Yeah, because that's how they would hold it.
Jesus Christ.
No articulation in the wrist.
Your moral obligation to that
Those
person,
signatures.
it has to change at that point. Because if this is somebody, if you came to me and Steve 2 weeks in a row, hey man, can you buy me dinner? We'd be like, dude, you have full capacity to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You're capable of achieving more than you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, if you're mentally handicapped and you can't do shit except maybe put groceries in a bag, or you can do some other menial task.
He's not insulting you. Don't look at me.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I think
I'm just trying to figure out
I think you can do more than that.
Thank you, man. I'm so glad that you think that.
I think all of us in the garage and viewers.
That's a big weight off my chest.
So
It's kind of like the fucking.
We learned a lot
It's
tonight.
like the Clementine thing.
Oh
It's
my
just.
the little oranges.
Sores in the mouth.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he brought it up.
He had to.
I have to, because you guys always talk about
You
it.
like little
Yeah.
oranges, huh?
I do.
They're delicious.
But they.
Is that an innuendo?
You get them in the bag or in the
All right,
crate?
all right.
I get them in a big orange bag. Kind of like a net.
Get them in the crate.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about with moral dilemmas?
Hey, I wasn't done.
You're never done.
No, I was done.
Go on.
The capacity.
He's our guest. He's our guest.
Be our guest. Be our
The
guest.
capacity matters.
I looked at my hands like the flex. It's just showing stress.
See that
See
vein in your
your vein?
forehead?
You got flux capacity?
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get up to 80.
It's in this thing.
All right, here we
Let's
go.
get it on. You finish your point. We'll go to closing
the-
remarks. We'll
And we'll start talking about guns more for Ray.
The capacity of the actor has a huge effect on morality, both of the person who the morals may apply to and the person who you may be acting for or against, whatever.
We're going back to selling.
No, I'm not. I'm not selling
That
anything.
actor is.
Nah, that's
You son of a bitch.
Anyway, so if you have a handicapped person coming to your door, you give them some food. They come that person become handicapped. I don't know why they're wandering about. They missed the bus. They're wandering to the next house. I don't know why they're there. But if
Look at that person become handicapped. And we're not laughing at, oh my God, this is so
Stop
derailed.
worrying about the offensive.
it's not derail. Okay.
Isn't it though?
Are they selling Girl Scout
Oh my God.
Right through the
Yeah. The Girl Scout cookies
We're
is
going
both.
off
It's like, dude, you're a dude.
Is it a handicapped person
going
with
off right.
Girl Scout cookies?
He may or may not. He may or may not have them. If he's selling them, he stole them because he's too old to be a Girl Scout.
It's a he.
Transphobe.
No.
No.
Go.
Okay.
Go on with
Here,
your story.
Quit interrupting me.
We're the hosts. We have to sometimes.
The capacity matters. So if a handicapped person comes to your door, you feed him once. Okay, he comes back. You feed him twice. You're looking at him like, is his eyes crossed? Is something off about him? And this is just being honest. You know, you can be
back to
pissed.
drug
Is he
addiction.
radio?
Is he radio?
Whatever. Go to like drug addiction.
So if you find that this person is perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, yet they keep acting in a way where they're not fulfilling their capacity,
Yeah.
to facilitate them acting in that way is immoral. If they come to you and you can tell this guy is not going to do much, I'll give him some food. You maybe teach him how to do some carpeting, whatever. The whole thing with the fish. Give some guy some fish.
Man of fish. You feed him for a lifetime. Give him that fish.
You don't
Feed him
feed it
that
for
day.
6 times.
Amen.
Got it.
So,
It's not.
if this guy comes up to you asking for fish, and he already knows how to fish, and he's just taking advantage of you for your abundance of fish, fuck that guy.
Is that good? Are you done?
No, if this guy has no idea how to fish because he can't figure it out, maybe you have some moral responsibility to try to impart knowledge or skills upon him.
Agreed.
That's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
Same thing with the kid. Let's say the kid. I'm not going to go into the kid.
No.
Hang on, what kid are you talking
No,
about?
we're not.
That's
You're
gonna
done.
get- the
You
sniper.
are done.
The sniper kid.
No.
Sniper kid.
No.
Alright, no.
Is the sniper kid a moral actor? And does that
Can be.
and
Yes,
does
yes,
that
yes,
affect
can be. You're right.
the proper moral action that the sniper has upon the kid?
I thought I gave a good example about the person at the door is setting up the person in the back of the house. But
No, that was just way off.
So the same.
You're
so,
just being paranoid at
so
this
to
point.
be-
You don't want to give anybody any help because somebody's breaking in.
So to be honest, the exact situation is that actually I wasn't awake, but there was a guy that came up to our house in
feel
the
like
middle
you
of the
should
night,
feed this
right?
story.
And the guy,
Middle of the night, like
feel like-
midnight?
yeah,
So
said call that.
Too late.
Yeah, too late.
Past dinner.
Yeah, so
Rude.
Yeah, it says once upon a time.
he said that while Brandon was talking, so we're good. So this guy, once my dad answers the door, and here's another factor. Our dog Hank is going off the walls, and you know how dogs can kind of sense
Yeah.
like a situation, right?
Yeah, someone at
And
your
he-
door at midnight. That's the situation.
But he's never done he never did
And make
that
capacity to sense doorbells.
before. Anyways, so when my dad came up to the door, the guy kind of stepped out of the light, right?
Yeah.
See, that's
You know what I mean?
I'd go after him. I'd kick him right in the stomach.
Well, and then that's.
Open the door.
But that's
Right
one
off
of the
the bat.
things. Like he's asking for about gas. My dad does. He just, there's no car. Where's the car?
Probably down the road. He didn't break.
Yeah, but there's a house right next to us.
I'm not defending.
He could have hit a few houses already.
I'm just saying. I think self-preservation at that point kicks in besides moral acting.
All right.
I agree. I think that self-preservation exists below moral actions, and that if self-preservation doesn't exist, there's no need for moral action.
So that's my whole thing, and I've already said that tonight. If you've been listening the whole time,
You're trying to sell a shit all night. Talking about sales tactics.
look in your right eye. No, I absolutely believe that. So the moral compass or moral dilemma, I think there is something there. But if you go in blindly based on just morals, right and wrong, you might end up in a compromising situation. That's what you guys have been talking about for quite some time right now. I think that that when you get down to it, when you look at moral dilemma, and it doesn't have to be the extremes we're talking about, it can be just everyday decisions or everyday actions. You were talking about karma, Brandon, driving down the road and all that stuff. Someone cuts you off, someone tries to race you, all that stuff. I think the biggest thing is I'll leave this as my closing remarks. When you're in an extreme situation, I'm one now, and I gave that, I guess, disclaimer or whatever it might be, is that I have a basis of a moral compass off of religion. I also have the reality now with a sociology degree, whether it's valid to you or not, anyone listening, but it's more that reality of understanding that everyone has different moral compasses around you. Brandon, you brought up the Western, Eastern, all that stuff. The religion side of it, everyone's got a different upbringing. It's not necessarily right or wrong. There are a lot of similarities, and I think the more educated, that's why I like talking to Brandon, because he has this self-education. He brought it up earlier. We're going way back in the podcast. We're going back an hour and a half at this point, if not 2 hours. That when someone says, don't look into this because that's wrong, and it's just an education standpoint for Brandon, which I love having him as a friend and someone close to me, in my opinion, that you have someone out there that actually does all that due diligence to do all of that, to look into that and educate themselves into the fact of what are the other people. And it's not like if you educate yourself on that you buy into it. There is that open door possibly to that. But if you have that moral compass, my biggest thing is that, and I think that the reoccurring theme is that you talk about a stranger at your door, you talk about the person on the side of the road, you talk about the sniper situation. My big thing is my moral compass is I can't make you believe what I believe. However, I will live, and it's a cliche, I guess, but it's that golden rule, is I will live by example, whether it's right or wrong. And my example at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50 years old, that example will change because of what I've learned from people in my life. This podcast is a great example of that. Brandon, in my life over the years, we've known each other for whatever it is, like fucking almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that we are still core the same people. He wants that Fiji water.
Totally immoral. Theft.
But I guess my point is, my closing remarks is that I think that survivalistic or that mentality should remain the same, but that also is based on moral compass or moral dilemma. So when you're putting that moral dilemma, it doesn't mean, when we talk about moral dilemma, it's not about doing what's right and what's wrong blindly. You do that, and you have to take into consideration that there are 7 billion people, we've determined that, 7 billion people that don't have the same moral compass out there. So you do the different scenarios we're talking about. You can't just have this mentality that everyone has the same moral compass. So if someone comes to your door at midnight, so no, their car must be down the way. And it's not that person's going to take advantage of it, or you kind of joked about it, but there's someone at the back door, I'm paranoid. But it's all of those things. And I'm not about to bring into guns and all that stuff, but it's not about being in charge, it's not about being right or wrong necessarily, but it's you internally that you can have that. And we talk about this all the time, and I'm not trying to get poetic here, and we've lost some listeners because we're pushing 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. But hopefully people do listen, because we're pushing 1,000 some people. My thing is that I want you to look at that balance. And that's where it is that where the moral compass or the moral dilemma, it's everything based on what you've been raised on as far as morals, whether it be religion or else otherwise. But that fundamental right and wrong is like, I always go back to, we haven't really talked about it, but murder. And murder, in my opinion, it's not that sniper out there. And you can justify that as murder, but it's why you're there. If you were just killing to kill, or you kill based on nothing more than just emotion, not necessarily action or for a greater good.
Or reason.
But again, that brings in other sides of it, of people that are doing it for radical reasons, and again, that doesn't agree. So that's maybe not a great example.
Call it extrajudicial murder.
Yeah, so my whole thing is that I just feel like your moral compass, when you go into this dilemma, whatever it might be, or your everyday actions, whether it be a road rage situation, I think that's the most common thing, where it's just an everyday situation. It doesn't really matter, but your moral compass actually says, I'm going to live by example, let that go, I'm not going to get worked up, I'm not going to escalate to that level, because it doesn't really matter. And when things actually matter, that's where you go into, you base it off your moral compass and your background, but it's based on survival. And a lot of times you find that confrontation is not the best way to handle it, but when it comes down to it, sometimes you have to go that route. But in this day and age, especially in America, where we're at, I mean, we're not preaching to the entire world as far as how their society, and that's where I was trying to introduce that mindset of where you're at geographically brings into society, brings into culture, brings into religion, brings into history, is that there are so many moving factors over time that you have to have an openness, but at the same time stick to your guns. And not like physical guns, but your moral guns. And that's where I'll leave mine, because we can talk about this all night.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just curious, like, about the whole, so what are you saying about, like, moral? I'm trying to figure, because I'm just trying to understand it from my perspective. Is that, so you're saying, like, with moral dilemmas, it's you stick to reason and then base stuff off of that, but you stick to your moral guns on a situation? I'm
saying you do your best. So when we were talking about the whole thing about being honest, all the time, I think that's a great example. And we dove into the relationship side of it. We joked around a little bit about it. I think you look at what you deem as the greater good for all parties considered. You try to, like a lot of situations, you don't just focus on yourself. You focus on all parties involved, and your decisions may not be right all the time. But at the same time, you actually are focusing on the fact that, like, you are trying to get the best out of everyone and be honest. So yeah, someone's saying, like, does this dress make me look fat? And it's like, yeah, it does. How do you actually address that? Do you just absolutely lie and be like, no, baby, it doesn't? Or no, you look great. Or, you know what, it's not that flattering. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, I would want you to say the same thing to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, like, oh, those jeans that I'm wearing a t-shirt tonight that someone got me, and it's like, it feels a little tighter than normal.
It's a little tight, Steve.
And I don't feel uncomfortable in it, but at the same time, it's like, that's one of those things that it's not necessarily, that's where someone says just blindly, like, no, you look good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you know what, like, it looks good, but it's this, it's how you actually address people. And that's, I know we were joking about looking into the right eye of the other person. It's not about that. It's all about taking emotions and taking that, like, my moral compass, and talking to Jake or talking to Brandon. I don't know everything about your guys' moral compass, but at the same time, it's like, I try to take into consideration, and you open a dialogue to a point. When it comes down to a sniper situation and all that stuff, the person at your door, that's not the same thing. I'm talking the everyday type stuff.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, it's a moral dilemma is, if you, here's my closing statement. If you feel like you're doing something wrong, chances are you're not going to be happy and you're doing something wrong in your mind. And we didn't talk about that much tonight because that's a very, very personal side of this. So it's like, if you're doing something wrong, like Christian brought it up, as far as, like, cheating and if you feel like, if in your gut that you're doing something wrong, chances are, again, 9 times out of 10, whatever the saying is, you're probably doing something that you're not going to be happy about. Whether you're telling something to someone else, like you're telling someone something else, or you're doing something that you're not sure of, but you feel like it's wrong,
yeah,
don't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because then you might have missed out on an opportunity, which we've actually talked about doing as a podcast subject. But when it comes down to it, if you feel like that, you probably shouldn't do that. Yeah. If you don't have a moral objection to it, if you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong, or if you feel like it's for the greater good of your life and other people's lives, then do it the right way and think about all the steps and all the people involved.
Yeah, and we can dive like farther into this too, but like, I'm sorry to keep it going.
But I'm sorry my t-shirt is tight.
But you look good though, Steve. It's tight, but you look good.
Thanks.
But I wanted
the Texas media.
But I wanted to know.
It's a large.
I wanted to know.
It's a gift.
He normally
Thank
wears
you, Liz.
extra larges.
I do.
So that's the difference.
What?
She was in Texas. She got a gift. I mean,
what I wanted to know was, what if you and you could go off
you gotta
different
answer
directions.
Answer to Liz. That's
a lot of different directions with this, and try not to go extreme, because I know when I say this, Brandon's going to get fired up. But if there's something that you want to do, but you feel like it's morally...
Are you asking another question? Are you keeping this going?
Yeah.
I thought we were wrapping it up.
No, you're closing remarks, man.
Okay, well, so I'll say my example. I struggled with, like, when I first started smoking cigars, because my dad, like, always told me that, like, smoking was bad, even though that he did it and quit when I was younger. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when I started smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and stuff like that, my moral compass, that's something slight and small, but my moral compass was spinning, because it's like I was taught this, but now I'm doing this and I want to do this, and it doesn't seem like it's that bad. But in my gut, it's like, well, you know,
you still feel
this is what I was taught. No.
No, we have Rob in the
But
store
I
today that
changed.
he was at a funeral or whatever for like, his wife's friend's mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Smokes 2-3 packs a day, 70, almost 80 years old, passed away, and he's that person. Like, so Rob's the guy that hangs in the shop a lot, and he's the wrong person to ask. Like, what do you think? It's like, yeah, she had a good run. Like, she smoked a shit ton, and she died.
Almost 80. That's a pretty good run.
She died from smoking cigarettes, is what they dialed into it. Same thing. It's like, well, you smoke cigars. It's like, yeah, if I wake up tomorrow with throat cancer or tongue cancer or whatever it is, there's no, like, it's unfortunate, and it's like, yeah, I think that a lot. It's like, that's terrible, but genetically I'm disposed to being susceptible to that, so I have to live and die by that. Or I could have not done that, and maybe I would have got hit by a truck tomorrow. Like, you have no control over it. You have your actions.
That's
right?
like eating eggs. Like for all the 90s.
The whole milk.
Not allowed to eat eggs because they're cholesterol. Now eggs are great. Yeah.
That was my milk example, and eggs would have been better. You're right.
Yeah. Well, not for you because you died.
Here's what I'll say to my
Sorry,
closing
you're
remarks.
right.
I go back to with moral dilemmas. With moral dilemmas, it's hard to kind of distinguish like what, you know, you can tell all these examples about like what you've dealt with and what we've dealt with, and you can give all these examples of what you should do and what you should not do or whatever. But really what it comes down to, and kind of build off what you were saying, Steve, is it comes down to the fact that we all have our own kind of moral compass that has been defined throughout our lives. What we deem acceptable and what we don't deem acceptable in our minds.
Right.
And I think some people, I think it's morally wrong to influence others on your belief, even if it's something that what they're doing is really not like deemed wrong in a societal standard. Like if you deem like murder or something to be right, it's deemed wrong. So, but
I get what you're saying.
There's a few
basics.
Don't murder, don't steal people's shit, don't rape. There's a few basics that everybody's pretty like, yeah.
No, I like what you're saying. It's the same thing about witnessing to other people about what you believe. It's like you can make your point, but don't necessarily there's that overall judgment. You know, it's politics, it's religion, it's everything else. It's
I
moral.
used to do that.
It's like if you do that, and it's like to you, you know, you were talking about weed earlier about your whole upbringing. It's like someone smokes weed, and you're like, oh, I can't talk to you. Now you fast forward several years, and it's like, yeah, I don't smoke weed, but I can also hang out with you. Like Brandon smokes weed.
I don't anymore.
No, you smoked weed, you did it for a long time, you did CBD, whatever. But it's like you have that social interaction bit where before you didn't. And that's where it's like he didn't influence you and push that on you. Like now you peer pressure, you have to smoke weed or whatever it is. And it's a very simple example.
I'll be honest, this has been like a tough subject for me to try and like create like a conversation around, because it's like you like I said, we all have our moral compasses, and it's like if I deem something right, like you may not.
No, absolutely.
And
that's where you learn though.
And it's super hard to like. I'm just talking about like as a podcast standpoint. Like that's super hard to talk about. But my closing remarks is just the fact that I love the fact that we had Brandon on. I love when you're on here, because you shed a different light on things that people may not even see or want to see or try to see. So I'll just commemorate you on that, and I think most people react rather than try to reason or look at the situation, and that I think is immoral.
Well, I don't think that's one of the great things we have before Brandon. I know you have closing remarks. That's one of the great things we've been talking about the last week about this podcast. Is that one of the great things we do is that we tried to do the Whiskey Wednesday thing. But one of the things that Jake and I talked about, Whiskey Wednesday a lot of times was based on getting together, scheduling something that like every Wednesday we get together, whether it be at the shop, in my garage, on your patio, whatever it might be, where we actually, a lot of it was spent in silence. So it's like you have an issue, you talk about it, then you reflect, and then you give your reflection. Other times, it's literally just sitting here and reflecting, like self-reflection. This, when we have viewers, we have listeners, one of the things we talked about, Jake, was that we have guests on because it's not necessarily that point, because that's not what people get out of it. Where it's that we just sit here and we smoke and drink, and then we're quiet for like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Which is what happens.
That is
in reality.
That's what happens on other nights now, but now we want to try to dive into it and get more out of it. And we're not trying to sell a show, but it's just, you're trying to get people involved.
I think this was a tough subject. I know you said that from the beginning.
I was the one that actually catered to the moral dilemma side of it, walking into it, and even in, like a half hour into it, when we're talking about the whiskey and cigars, I'm like thinking internally, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna say.
It's a tough subject.
Yeah.
Do you have like, what are your final thoughts, Brandon? Like, what has there been something that has caught your eye like tonight that has really stumped you?
Not really stumped, but the thing that I find most interesting is the idea of where morals can be exploited. As far as something from this conversation,
that was a huge point when you brought that up.
Yeah.
What I would take further, if I were to do a little research, maybe a little study, or just reflection on it, is the idea of understanding that morals exist. Because basically, and you're gonna love this, people are trying to tell all these fucking monkeys how to behave properly.
No, you're right.
So they don't fuck everything up.
I laugh because we've had multiple discussions on the fact of monkeys and monkey brain.
Yeah.
So morals exist for that reason, to further, basically a bunch of apes into building something beyond, what physically we adapted for, or we evolved for. And so you have this idea, you're going from physicality and just kind of a physical existence of where the survival element comes in.
Yeah.
You reproduce, you survive, you eat, you shit, you fuck, you kill those that might kill you, and then you succeeded. If you can do that,
that's good order.
Yeah, if you do that, you succeeded.
Wow.
But as you progress into wherever we're at now, where we can start reflecting on larger things than what am I going to eat or who am I going to fuck. Not everybody, but some of us do.
So you relax a little bit.
Yeah, and you can start thinking about how do we build a better society, what's a proper way to treat one another, and what are the morals. I don't think that word would have come in yet, but what are the proper ways to interact with other individuals within our society that is going to further both my interest, their interest, and the interest of those in the future?
Yeah.
That's what I think morals are. So that being the case, I think that the most interesting thing that I kind of would take from this conversation is if we can agree that they're important because of their objective. Their objective is something, grander than what we are as just a monkey species. If we can all accept that they're important, morals, ethics, whatever you're going to call it, is important, it's imperative that you look at where they can be exploited. Because if they can be exploited, it weakens them. Right. And they're designed to strengthen the individual and the society within which the individual exists.
Yeah.
So if they can be exploited, you have to understand that. Because if they can be exploited, an enemy, whoever it may be, will exploit them to your detriment. And so whether it's continuing to give somebody food that doesn't deserve it or can earn it himself, and you can, rather than give him food, you can tell him, hey, let me try to get you a job, let me try to teach you a skill, let me do something to bring you into the grander society than just monkeys roaming the jungle.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me, of how those two things mix. Because if you take it just a black and white, help your neighbor. What if your neighbor's a piece of shit?
Yeah.
And he needs a lesson.
You got fucking Chet next door.
Yeah. Chet just asking for pies and sandwiches.
All the time, man.
Constantly.
Fucking all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the thing.
By the way, Chris is great. We watched. Yeah.
He doesn't know which one you're
I like that though.
No, Chris and Julie are listening. They're great neighbors.
Oh, there, Chris and Julie, you're not a piece of shit.
But when you brought up, I think that was the best point of the night, was when you brought up like moral exploitation.
It's important because it can ruin the whole edifice.
Important, and
society is built on these moral systems that we create,
and people exploit
exploitation
that all
of
the
them
time.
Threaten the entire edifice of it.
Yeah.
So exploring that further, I think, would be very interesting.
No, I agree. Did you want to say anything, Steve?
Yeah, my big thing is, so for those listening on Facebook Live still, or they listen all the way to the end of the podcast, you wish you were down there in Cuba with Brandon and I.
Mm-hmm.
Being with this dude down in Cuba over the years, we've had a lot of experiences over the last, several years that...
At least 15.
Well, yeah, but even the last 10, 5 to 7 to 8 years in my transition in life, you have a consistent person, and anyone listening in here, and you joke around like Nate says, you can't say monkey brain, and it's like it's that simplistic way of thinking based on an immense amount of education, where it's literally, you have someone in your life that I encourage everyone to seek out, that there's someone in there that he doesn't always, or he or she don't, like Brandon, I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You don't always say what people want to hear, but you're very direct. And at times, one thing that I don't want to say bothers me about you, but I appreciate on the flip side of that, is that there are times that person doesn't want to hear. And I'll say this, the moral dilemma for someone like Brandon that I feel like I know so well, and I'm still learning after all these years, 15, 20 years, I'm still learning that friendship, that there are times that he says things that I want to hear, and other times that he is purposely saying things that he knows I don't want to hear, but he knows that's the greater goal for me and for him and for everyone else involved. That's where I've learned a lot from him, that a lot of things I say in this podcast, I've been influenced by someone like Brandon, including Brandon and other people that have influenced me to talk a certain way, that if I say something, it's not because I don't care or I'm just numb to it, but at some point you say things to a level that it's gonna ripple it, But in the end, it's like Brandon sees a lot of times the end. A lot of times you don't. I'm not saying you know all the answers. I'm saying
I wing it a lot.
Yeah, but you put yourself out there more than you think, Brandon, that you do, because you know you're steadfast, and I think that's a big part of the moral side of it. Is that if you're steadfast in your morals and what you think is right and morally right for that person, and what's going to make them happy or make them turn that corner if they need to. That's the type of person that Brandon is, that I've learned. And I hope all of you guys on Facebook Live and everyone that's listening to the podcast, that you either have that person or you actually open yourself up to that person, that you not close them out because they said something that actually said wrong to you. That in your mind you're like, fuck that guy or fuck that girl, like, you know what I mean? Like, and Brandon's had those people in his life that said, fuck that guy over. Have you not?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you stick with that, that's where it's the trials and tribulations of a relationship that people put up with when it shouldn't be there. You have a loyal person there that's morally steadfast. And we didn't talk about morally steadfast in this podcast. That you have that person that actually is still learning, but they are openly learning, and they will bring you into that world. And that's where I love that. You always say that, you love hearing Brandon. I've heard from Brandon for over a decade. And I love seeing like Jake lean to you and just like dial in to your fucking monkey brain shit. Where I'm like, yeah, I've heard this for a long time, and I want other people to hear this. That's why I want you a part of this. Because that's where I think that you have that influence, where it's like there's a little bit of shock value, there's a lot of steadfast morality, whether it's what they believe in, but it's steadfast, it's educated, and I like going back full circle back to the beginning of the podcast, that you actually educate yourself on the flip side. That a lot of people, and you know that, and Jake, you know that, Dustin, you're in the garage, you know that, not many other people actually educate themselves on what people say not to educate themselves on. Mm-hmm. And I like that. So I'll say that, I'll leave that.
I think we've learned that regardless of the night and the topic, that our closing remarks, Steve goes last. Because if he goes first, he's going to talk, and then he has his closing remarks, and then we do it around the table.
I'm complimenting
and
this,
man.
I'm
just giving you shit.
It's
my only time I can give Steve shit, so I'm doing it. All right.
Well, we are co-hosts to this. I'll cheers to that real quick. We're not cheering it out of here because we need to actually say.
Can I do this?
Go ahead, bud.
I just we want to thank everyone for sticking around for, this was another long one, close to 3 hours.
Fuck,
Yeah, so This was another long one. We really appreciate everyone sticking around for this long. We want to thank our sponsors of the evening, providing the Rocky Patel 20th anniversary with the Tinderbox at Easton. We want to thank Altadis for providing the second cigar of the night, the Monte Cristo Classic Series. Both were very, very good. I think the new Riff personally was okay. For those that want to know, it's around $45 to $50. I don't know if I can justify it at that, but for a 4-year, it was
45.
good.
I think it's good.
Yeah. Well, we can
in the bourbon market today. I think that's it.
Yeah. I agree. As we're still drinking, we're drinking the 107 now. We're about to move on to our third cigar of the night, provided by BS Cigar Company. So thank you very much for that sponsorship. As always, Brian and Steve, you guys have done great things with those blends, this gold and the silver. Don't forget to come into the Tinderbox at Easton within this next week up until Tuesday evening to get 15% off on the Rocky Patel anniversary, the 20th anniversary. Make sure you mention the Bourbon BS podcast. At the end of this, when you're done listening, please share it. Please like it. Tell a friend. We really want to grow this thing. We got some big things in store, and we know that we've been talking about that and saying that for the last few weeks, last month or so. But there are a lot of things that we're working on and that we've projected more and put more energy towards, and we're really, really excited. We're eager and everything. And anything else I missed, Steve?
Nate says Steve always has something to say, and I do, because last night, actually, this last week's podcast, we were just at 1,000 views. Mm-hmm. And I thanked everyone for doing that.
Yep.
Because we're doing the podcast thing, and it's growing, but we are taking away from the podcast views on Facebook. Now, when I posted that,
a second time,
I thanked everyone for doing the 1K views.
Yeah.
And we're at like 1050, so 1,050 views. By the time we did this podcast tonight, I thanked everyone, and we had some banter going back and forth on that post. That was on my personal page.
Yeah.
We're now at over 1.2K.
Yeah, and that's been within.
So we're now at like 1250. Yeah, so like you add another 150 views on that, and all that Facebook does is really anyone that views it, they click on it and listen to it or view it for more than 3 seconds. That's great. Jake and I are now listening and watching where people like the peaks and valleys, because Facebook does that. So what I want to say is that we're doing all of that, and I'm not trying to take away from it. I do have something to say all the time. I do. That's what we do. Jake and I were up till 1 o'clock in the morning last night, actually talking about the podcast and the T-shirts, which you're going to see very, very shortly. Talk to Eric Espinosa about where we can print the T-shirts. But after we do this, I want to throw this out there, and we'll put this on social media. When we finish this, I'm gonna walk over to the camera, and I'm gonna make sure I hit save and save in HD for Facebook, right?
Yep.
But also now we are transitioning to YouTube. We are actually growing into another social media platform.
Yeah.
So if you're not on Facebook, now we're gonna push this out through email and everything else, hopefully.
Yeah.
That if you don't have friends that are on Facebook, then you can push them onto the YouTube video.
Yeah.
So we're growing constantly. We're constantly trying to do that. So what I'll say is thank you to the sponsors, thank you to you guys, thank you to Brandon for being on here. He's a friend of mine for a long time. He's a friend of the podcast, friend of Tinderbox. Dustin, thank you for being a part of this. I mean, as always, Dustin Bovey being here. He wasn't on camera tonight, but that's what we're trying to listen to everyone of how this flows better and better and better. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to keep growing that. So take it out.
So you're Steve Crane. I'm Jake Sanders, and this is the Bourbon and BS podcast. Episode 32. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. Generosity is awesome.
Cue the guitar.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Cue the guitar, Steve.
Big up. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and keeping up with this. We know it's been a long one, but it was a lot of great conversation. Thanks again, Brandon.
Absolutely.
It was awesome.
Hey, Brandon, smile.